Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another horrible case. The case of Misty Morse. On July 23, 2000, a former judge was walking on Merritt Island, Florida, checking on his boat at the dock. While admiring his boat, he noticed something suspicious in the water. When he bent down to investigate, he smelled a very unpleasant odor. This was not the first time he had encountered dead sea creatures, so he assumed it might be an animal carcass. He contacted a special service to remove the object from the water. However, when experts arrived, they quickly realized the situation was much more serious. It was the body of a girl. The police were called to the scene. Since the body was in the water, it was important to recover it promptly and carefully to avoid losing evidence. The longer the body remained submerged, the more evidence would be washed away. To assist in this, a dive team was deployed. They entered the water with a special bag designed to retrieve the body. This device removes water and wraps tightly around the body, ensuring that as much evidence as possible is preserved. The police observed that the victim was not in the final stages of decomposition. The unidentified girl had been in the river for several days and was found in a state of her hands and feet were tied with rope, and her entire body, especially her head, was covered with several layers of tape. It appeared that the perpetrator had tried to silence the girl, as her face was tightly wrapped, covering her mouth, eyes, nose, and ears. This suggested a deliberate attempt to prevent her from surviving the attack. Identifying the victim was difficult because there were no personal belongings or identification on the body. The police quickly began a murder investigation. It was clear that she had likely been tortured for a long time and possibly abused. To fully understand the circumstances surrounding the victim's death, a thorough analysis was required. This process began with collecting the victim's fingerprints, which were taken by a specialist who accompanied the police to the crime scene. This information was expected to aid in identifying the body. The police faced a major challenge because water can easily wash away evidence, such as DNA and fingerprints. After several days in the river, there might not be any useful evidence left for investigation. Additionally, the heat significantly accelerated the decomposition process, so the body was quickly taken to the laboratory for further examination. Forensic scientists began examining the physical evidence found at the crime scene, focusing on a rope and a black rubber band used to secure garbage bags around the victim's legs. The bags were severely damaged, and forensic experts believe they were originally used to weigh down the body and prevent it from floating. It is possible that rocks or other heavy objects were placed inside the bags to keep the victim submerged. However, the current caused the bags to tear open due to a sharp rock, spilling their contents. The body eventually floated to the surface. The police particularly focused on several pieces of duct tape that were also found at the scene. The sticky side of the tape could contain evidence, as attackers often leave fingerprints and skin particles on it, especially at the ends where the tape is torn from the roll. This evidence could potentially lead to a suspect. However, the police were unable to find enough material on the pieces of duct tape. After careful analysis, they determined that some of the black hairs that had been glued together did not belong to the victim, who had chestnut hair. This suggested that the hairs belonged to someone else. The police sent the hairs for further analysis, but unfortunately, they did not provide any useful information. With the technology available in 2000, all hope now rested on an autopsy. Unfortunately, the water had washed away most of the evidence, and the autopsy revealed that the body was too decomposed to determine the cause of death. Although no traces of male bodily fluids were found on the body, this did not rule out the possibility that the victim had been abused. After analyzing all the gathered information, the police came to a conclusion. The body showed no signs of serious injury. It is believed that the victim may have died from asphyxiation due to the tape covering her mouth and nose, or from strangulation before being dumped in the river. Although there was water in her lungs and stomach, this did not mean that she had drowned. Instead, the prolonged time in the river had naturally filled her body with water. The forensic expert identified the victim through her fingerprints. She was Misty Morse, 22 years old. Her relatives described her as cheerful, friendly, and sociable. Misty enjoyed spending time with friends and attending parties, which was normal for her age. However, she stayed away from bad influences and had no connections to the criminal world or illegal drugs. Instead, she focused on her future. When she was not with her friends, she dedicated her time to preparing for college. Misty was very serious about her studies. On July 24, 2000, police arrived at Misty's family home in Indian Harbor Beach, Florida. They were greeted by her mother, Linda Morse, who was in shock at the heartbreaking news of her daughter Misty's death. Stunned, Linda turned to her husband, the girl's biological father. She desperately wanted to know who might have harmed her daughter, but the police had no leads to share. Instead, they explained that they had come not only to inform her of the death, but also to look for any information that might help identify a potential suspect. In her state of shock, Linda found it difficult to concentrate. However, the police asked her for any information about Misty's last known whereabouts. Linda recalled that 4 days earlier, on July 20, 2000, Misty had returned home in a state of great excitement. After showering, drying her hair, and getting dressed, she was ready to go. As she walked out, she and Linda ran into each other and shared a few jokes. Suddenly, Misty's cell phone rang. She initially ignored the call, but when it rang again, she felt compelled to answer. It seemed that Misty was hiding something. She stepped out of the room to talk briefly with the caller. When she returned, she seemed more serious and said she had to go. Normally, she was very sociable, but that night, she acted secretive, which aroused some suspicion. Misty promised to come back the next day, and she did not send any messages. On July 21, Linda went to work and spent the whole day there. In the evening, Misty still did not return home. Linda didn't think much of it, as Misty often slept over at friends' houses and would be gone for days. However, it was unusual for her not to have made a phone call or sent a text message. By the next morning, Linda was very worried. Misty would normally be gone for a while, but she always let her mother know where she was and never missed her scheduled time to return. Neither her father nor her friends could reach Misty. On July 24, Linda planned to go to the police station that evening to report Misty missing. However, before she could do so, her worst fears came true when the police came to her home to inform her that Misty's body had been found in a nearby river. Linda gave the police permission to search her daughter's room. Everything seemed normal, except for one strange detail. Misty's handbag was on the table. It appeared untouched, containing all of Misty's daily necessities except for her cell phone and driver's license. It was clear that Misty had not intended to be gone for long and planned to return soon. It was also clear that the last person Misty had communicated with was someone she knew well, as they had spoken on the phone shortly before she left. After discussing the situation in detail, Linda and the police decided to check Misty's call logs. Linda's claims were verified through Misty's cell phone logs. She had received 2 calls from an unknown number. Unfortunately, the police were unable to identify the owner of the unknown number, which put them at a standstill. They decided to focus on the limited clues found on Misty's body. The most intriguing clue was a rope with a distinctive red and white pattern, along with duct tape found on Misty's body. After an investigation, it was discovered that this duct tape was part of a specialized set used in sailing. Initially mistaken for ordinary repair tape, this type of tape is actually a special device used to temporarily repair sails while at sea. It is known for its high strength and adhesion and can withstand heavy loads. This information may indicate that the police are looking for someone with sports skills, or perhaps someone who has served in the Navy or worked on ships. The police decided to re-interview Misty's family, suspecting that people who knew Misty might be involved in the case. Misty's mother, Linda, informed the police about her daughter's past relationships, leading them to focus on two young men, Teddy Underwood and Bobby Cooper. Both were ex-boyfriends whose relationships with Misty had ended shortly before the tragedy. The investigation revealed that the motive for the murders was likely jealousy. Teddy was particularly notable for his lengthy criminal record, which included multiple cases of abuse and theft, despite his young age. The police then brought Teddy in for questioning. They were surprised to find him to be a friendly, cooperative young man who provided all the necessary information. He also agreed to a DNA test. Teddy explained that he had only met Misty once on the day of her disappearance. He claimed that he did not want to pursue the relationship and that they had broken up amicably. They had met online and communicated for a while before deciding to meet in person to get to know each other better. Despite Teddy's friendly demeanor, the police remained suspicious, believing that he might be trying to deceive them and divert attention from himself. Teddy agreed to let the police search his home, but they found no evidence linking him to the crime. He had no military experience and no interest in the sea. He provided a solid alibi for the entire evening and night of the murder, and he was therefore ruled out as a suspect. The police then began investigating Bobby, the next suspect, because he owned a boat. He appeared to be knowledgeable about emergency sail repair tape and a specially woven rope. Bobby had openly expressed his romantic feelings for Misty, which raised suspicions since he had tried to pursue her before the murder. He was devastated when he learned of Misty's death. The young man cooperated with the police, allowing them to search his home and passing all required tests. He had no criminal record, no history of drug use, and no addiction problems. Overall, Bobby seemed like a nice guy. During questioning, he showed strong emotions and appeared genuinely nervous, which made the police more inclined to believe him. However, things changed when the police discovered Misty's driver's license in Bobby's house. Bobby later added to his story, claiming that he had been in contact with Misty for a long time. He said that she had visited him several times and had left her license during one of her visits. Despite this, he remained a suspect. Surprisingly, at the end of the interview, Bobby recalled Misty's ex-boyfriend. Before the murder, Misty had mentioned a man who surprised Bobby because she described this man as a Special Forces soldier from the Navy. Bobby did not remember his name, but this detail piqued the police's interest, prompting them to investigate further. Linda recalled that one of her daughter's ex-boyfriends was a man named Brent Huck, a former military man. Brent and Misty had been together for a long time. Linda did not approve of their relationship, as she found Brent to be too rude. Her daughter often complained about him, saying that he was aggressive and sometimes violent in his attempts to assert control. Eventually, they broke up. Linda did not initially mention Brent because it had been over a year since they broke up. She believed that they had not seen each other or communicated since then, but she was wrong. The police ran Brent Huck through the database and found some disturbing details. First, his background as a ship captain at the time of Misty's murder raised suspicion. He lived on the island near where Misty's body was discovered. He apparently had access to special marine equipment and the skills needed to operate it, making him a potential suspect. Brent was subsequently arrested and taken in for questioning. During the interrogation, he seemed willing to cooperate, but he was clearly nervous and stressed. He was also very wary of the police. Additionally, Brent showed an unusual lack of emotion when informed of Misty's death. He seemed completely unaffected by her passing. The police discovered that the couple continued to see each other as friends, even though those around them thought they had broken up. In fact, they had been seeing each other regularly, up until the day Misty died. During the police interview, Brent's behavior was unusual compared to previous suspects. As the interview progressed, he became increasingly critical of his ex-girlfriend Misty, describing her as immoral and speaking ill of her character. Near the end of the interview, Brent revealed that he had called Misty several times on the night of her disappearance and admitted that they were still in a relationship. The police continued to work with Brent, trying to gather useful information. He seemed to know a lot about Misty's social life, including who she spent time with and what she did with other people. The police were particularly interested in the timing of his phone calls on the night of the murder. Brent claimed that a friend had told him that Misty had spread rumors about being pregnant and that he was the father. He called her to ask her to stop spreading the rumors, expressing concern that it might jeopardize his current relationship. Brent claimed that he did not see Misty in person that night. He only spoke to her on the phone. During the first long call, they talked about many topics, while in the second short call, he confirmed that everything was clear and that Misty understood him. The police doubted his testimony because the autopsy showed no evidence of pregnancy. However, they acknowledged their ongoing intimate relationship, which created a strong motive. Brent denied any involvement in the case and maintained his innocence. During questioning, he had noticeable scratches on his hands, possibly from a struggle with Misty. When questioned by the police, Brent explained that his dog had pulled him while he was skateboarding, causing him to fall and sustain scratches. The police obtained a search warrant for Brent's home. They discovered significant evidence there, including garbage bags identical to those found at the scene with Misty. In the garage, they found black rubber bands that matched the type of straps used to secure the bags on Misty's feet, along with duct tape and a rope with a specific weave that matched the material used to bind Misty. This evidence linked Brent to the case, and they then contacted the prosecutor's office. The district attorney deemed the evidence insufficient to prosecute, stating that they needed more information and confirmation of Brent's guilt beyond circumstantial evidence. Unfortunately, no new leads emerged for a long time. The police felt helpless as the murder suspect continued to live freely. Misty's family was devastated, convinced of Brent's guilt. Although he was under investigation, progress had stalled for weeks. After Misty's death, details of the case were leaked to the media, and her family hoped that public interest would reignite the investigation. Despite the media attention, there was still no progress. A year had passed since the case, but nothing had changed. During this time, Misty's parents pressured the police to seek justice. Meanwhile, the police continued to pursue every small clue, even when the case seemed to have reached a dead end. However, they were determined not to give up. In the fall of 2002, surprising information emerged from a genetics lab in Davis, California. However, it was not what the police expected. They discovered that the black hairs found on the tape from Misty's body were not human. They belonged to a dog. This reminded the police of a black dog at Brent's house. The police began to wonder if it was possible to identify animals by their fur, which had been done in a previous case. Further analysis revealed that Brent's dog had the same type of fur as the one found on the tape. The dog was a unique cross between a Rottweiler and a German Shepherd. This finding was more than just a coincidence. It represented a major breakthrough. The police now felt they had enough evidence to file charges. On October 23, 2002, Brent was arrested for the murder of Misty Morse. He maintained his innocence, claiming that he could not have committed such a heinous act. The prosecution argued that Brent's motive was his fear that Misty might become pregnant, which he believed could jeopardize his relationship with another girlfriend he loved dearly. They presented extensive circumstantial evidence, including dog hair analysis, that implicated Brent-related. Brent's attorney argued that the case against him was a complete fabrication, asserting that there was no credible evidence pointing to him as the perpetrator. The defense attempted to discredit Misty by highlighting her past, which angered her family, who believed she was a good person and did not deserve this tragedy. Brent's defense team also claimed that the medical examiner was unable to conclusively determine Misty's cause of death. Additionally, there was no weapon or witness to link Brent to the crime, but despite their efforts, the defense was unsuccessful in proving his innocence. In May 2003, a jury convicted Brent Huck of first-degree murder with aggravating circumstances and kidnapping. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and all of his appeals were denied. Brent is currently serving his sentence in a correctional facility in Florida. Although there is a clear connection between him and the crime, the motive remains unclear. Brent has never admitted guilt or shown remorse and maintains that he had nothing to do with the murder. Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case, the case of Teed family. What was supposed to be a peaceful holiday turned into a terrible nightmare, leaving the survivors with scars that would never heal. When the Teed family set out for their remote house to celebrate Christmas, they had no idea that their trip would lead them into a tragedy few could have imagined. So, what happened to them? Join me as we explore the story of today's case. Rolf Teede was born in Germany. When he was just 11 years old, he and his mother moved to the United States. Shortly after their arrival, his mother remarried and chose to begin a new life following her first unsuccessful marriage. Rolf was a quiet boy who excelled in his studies. When he started college, he met Kay. They were both studying similar subjects and shared similar life views. Like Rolf, Kay was calm and sociable, and she dreamed of building her American dream and starting a family with someone who shared her values. Rolf quickly seemed like the perfect match for her. They had so much in common that after their first meeting, they became inseparable. At this point, Rolf was just over 20 years old. Both of them had serious intentions for their future, and their parents supported their relationship, which was progressing well. The two of them decided to move to a new home and began a journey across the country. They first lived in Nevada, then in Utah, but this was just the start. As they traveled to various locations, Rolf and Kay enjoyed their time together and eventually chose to get married. Shortly after, they started planning their next move, looking for a larger house and considering starting a family. In 1963, the young couple moved to the small town of Humble, Texas, which had a population of around 10,000. They were dedicated members of the Christian church, loved children, and aspired to have a large family. They quickly became part of the local community and earned the respect of those around them. Unfortunately, the Teede couple faced challenges that prevented them from having children for many years. However, they found a solution. They decided to adopt. After adopting their second child, Kay was surprised to find out that she was pregnant again, which they viewed as a miracle. The pregnancy was so subtle that she didn't even realize it. She later gave birth to a healthy daughter named Trish. The family enjoyed a fulfilling life and happy, having everything they needed to cherish their time together. Rolf excelled in trading and had dreamed of starting his own business since his student days. By the time their children were born, he was earning a good income, which allowed Kay to stay home and focus on raising the children. Thanks to his hard work and entrepreneurial spirit, Rolf opened a company in 1969 that quickly became part of the Houston retail market. With their financial stability, they eventually purchased a house in Utah, a small town with just over 500 residents in the 1990s. The mountainous area felt peaceful and secluded. They found a beautiful house perched high in the mountains, and it was considered very safe, much quieter than the nearby towns. The locals were well acquainted with one another, and their family seamlessly integrated into this community. The house was located about 4 kilometers from the nearest road. A beautiful river flowed nearby, with trees lining both banks. Despite the transportation challenges, especially in winter, their family made it a tradition to spend the entire Christmas holiday there every year. To reach the house, they would leave their car in a parking lot near the road and use snowmobiles to travel up into the mountains, as this was the quickest way to get there. By December 1990, their family's routine had not changed. They planned to return to their forest house for the Christmas holidays. On December 20th, Kay and her son, Sean, flew from Texas to Oakley, where her sister Claudia Tidwell Nelson picked her up. Claudia drove her so they could wait together for the others. Rolf, Line, and Trish were scheduled to arrive the following evening, December 21st. Typically, Rolf wrapped up his work before the vacation, while Kay visited her sister Claudia to help organize the gathering and prepare food and supplies for their trip to the mountains. At the usual spot where they parked their cars to switched modes of transportation, Kay and Claudia noticed a young man who looked suspicious. Even though it was freezing outside, he was wearing light shoes and a thin shirt, which was quite odd. They offered to assist him, but he didn't respond and instead walked faster, quickly disappearing from view. They reached their house just before sunset and had dinner. Claudia chose to stay overnight. In the morning, thinking she saw a figure outside the window. Claudia and Kay searched for any signs outside but found nothing. It appeared that someone had used their paths without being seen. Ultimately, they chose to focus on getting ready for the busy weekend ahead. On December 21st, by the time Rolf and his daughters arrived, everything is almost ready. Kay shared details about recent events, including a suspicious person she had encountered while with Claudia. She felt particularly uneasy about this stranger, who seemed to belong to the area. Kay suggested that Rolf take hunting rifles and transport them to the house on a snowmobile, just in case something unexpected occurred. However, Rolf declined, believing there was no need for such precautions. He felt confident that everything would be fine and thought that carrying weapons in everyday life was too dangerous. In fact, Rolf lacked experience with rifles and pistols. He mentioned that this area has been the safest in the last 100 years. In the suburbs, there has only been one incident, which was not even related to gunfire. Despite some aggressive driving and poor behavior on the roads, there have only been a few robberies over several decades. Unfortunately, he was unaware of how dangerous some people in the area had become. Kay expressed that something was off, so she decided to take precautions. She grabbed a couple of rifles and loaded them onto the snowmobile, saying it would make her feel safer. Her husband did not object. An adult among the teenagers helped move their belongings into the house. Claudia left in the morning to buy supplies she had forgotten for the upcoming holiday. Kay and Rolf decorated their home and prepared for a celebration. Because they lacked some necessities, they decided to go to the city to buy more. At this time, Sean, feeling overwhelmed by the busyness, asked to stay the night with his Aunt Claudia, which likely helped him relax. After dropping Sean off, their family visited Kay's mother, Beth. At that time, she was 72 years old, had poor eyesight, and was partially paralyzed due to a car accident earlier that year. Kay and her family visited her regularly and often took her to their home. This visit was no different. They spent the evening talking and enjoying each other's company, preparing to leave for the mountains the next day. On December 2nd, around noon, Teed family went to town. It was a particularly frosty day. The group then split up. Rolf and Trish planned to return to the cabin, while Kay, Linny, and Beth walked towards their house in the mountains. The two groups ended up about 2 hours apart. Kay and Linny arrived at their destination first and intended to set up a chair. While stopping near the garage, Linny noticed a dark figure in the main bedroom. Mistaking it for her cousin David, she didn't think much of it. Linny ran in, immediately turned on the hot water to warm her hands, and with her peripheral vision, she saw a dark figure hiding behind the refrigerator. Thinking it was just David, trying to scare her, she laughed to herself. However, when the figure stepped into the light, she realized it wasn't David at all. It was a young man with curly hair, he pointing a gun at her. She attempted to alert the others, but they had already noticed the armed intruder. Kay felt powerless against the intruder, regretted not grabbing a gun from the garage. He commanded Linai to help her grandmother and mother go upstairs. Beth, with her daughter and granddaughter, struggled to ascend to the second floor, worried that the intruder might start attacking if they didn't hurry. Another man wearing glasses appeared, also holding a weapon. Kay panicked, pleaded for their lives, promising to give anything. Without hesitation, the stranger man with curly hair attacked her by force. She fell to the ground, screaming in pain. The assailant attacked her several more times. Then, he aimed the gun at Beth and also attacked by force her in the face. Surprisingly, Beth did not die. She collapsed but quickly tried to get back up. The thug attacked her again multiple times. He confused about needing to use so many bullets, while another man seemed to enjoy the chaos. Lini prepared for her own fate, but unexpectedly, she was taken to the bedroom. The intruders gagged her with a dirty sock and tied her hands and feet. One of the two strangers brought a dog and handed over for Linai, claiming it would calm her down. They left her and returned to their shot victims. Gang leader continues to attack Kay and Beth, then took all the jewelry from the dead and emptied their pockets of valuables. They dragged the bodies outside, leaving them in front of Linai. She had just witnessed her grandmother and mother die. Simultaneously, she realized her father and younger sister would be home soon. She was in danger herself and wanted to warn them, but there was no time. At 2:45 p.m., Rolf and Trish rode snowmobiles back to the house. Sean still lives with Claudia. Meanwhile, the killers were waiting for new victims, and one of them held a weapon to Linai's head, threatening to kill her if she made a sound. When Rolf entered the house, he saw Lini being used as a human shield by an armed man who had a weapon pressed to her head. The strangers confronted Rolf and the rest in the living room. The newcomers immediately noticed the bodies of their loved ones and wanted to help, but the attackers prevented them from doing so. In a desperate attempt, Rolf began emptying his pockets, giving the criminals cash and his expensive watch. However, the leader ordered his partner to attack Rolf. The second attacker hesitated, clearly reluctant to get involved. Finally, the leader aimed his pistol and pulled the trigger, but it only clicked. He tried again, and still nothing happened. The third time, he succeeded in attacking Rolf. Trish panicked to see her father collapse to the floor, bleeding. The attackers then searched Trish's bag, but did nothing to her. Instead of escalating the violence, the criminals took Linai and Trish to a bedroom, then locked them inside. They found canisters of gasoline stored in the house for snowmobiles, and began pouring it everywhere. They chatted casually, unwrapped Teed family's gifts, and filmed their antics with a camera they found in the home. They even enjoyed a festive meal prepared by Kay. It seemed they had planned to destroy all evidence of their presence, and they acted nonchalantly. They then returned to Rolf. The leader attacked him in the back of the head again, and subsequently poured gasoline over his body as well. The criminals ordered Trish and Lini to load all the stolen items onto snowmobiles, which were in the garage. They didn't use gasoline to set the garage on fire, as they needed it for their escape. A guy loaded his gun, unbuttoned his jacket, and revealed a knife. Lini noticed this, and he assured her. The criminals then set fire to the house and drove away with the two girls as hostages. While driving the snowmobiles, Trish and Linai considered their options for escaping. They thought about crashing into a tree or causing an accident to get rid of their captors, but they couldn't come up with a plan. During this time, their uncle, Randy Zorn, was driving his car to the Teed family home. He encountered the snowmobile carrying criminals and waved to them, thinking they were familiar faces, possibly his nieces with their boyfriends. However, he was taken aback when they didn't respond to his greeting. Normally, Linai and Trish were respectful and would greet him back. The criminals didn't recognize Randy and simply drove past him. In the parking lot, the strangers transferred the girls into Teed family's car. It was the car Rolf brought the food to, They filled with fear that the experience of their death would be painful. With no other choice, they complied and took their seats in the back of the car. Randy also arrived in the parking lot and waved to them. However, Lenny and Trish ignored him because they feared he might become the next target of the killers. The leader of the group noticed Randy and asking Line if she knew him. She responded that she did not recognize the man. Right after that, the car carrying the hostages left the scene. A moment later, Randy saw a man coming. There was severe frost, but he was without a jacket, without shoes, and even without a hat. It seemed his face was literally torn apart, with drops of blood frozen on him and his face swollen. Randy recognized it was Rolf. Rolf told of the attack on his family. Remarkably, he survived and managed to escape to the parking lot in an effort. He said, "The attackers broke into his house in the woods, doused it with gasoline, and set it on fire. The fire quickly spread, but Rolf pretended to be dead and waited until the chaos died down before taking action. He initially tried to put out the fire, but the fire spread quickly due to the gasoline, causing his jacket to catch fire. He ran into the bathroom, took it off and suffering only minor burns. Fortunately, the garage was not on fire." Driven by the desire to save his daughters, Rolf pursued the kidnappers for 4 kilometers, despite being injured and having impaired vision. He knew the route well enough to reach his destination, but he clearly needed urgent medical attention. Randy put him in the car and drove towards the city, but the medical center was too far away. Randy fears that there may not be enough time to save Rolf's life. He called emergency services, requesting the helicopter and reporting a fire. Meanwhile, the criminals with the hostages were heading towards the canyon. Suddenly, a patrol car passed by them. The police car quickly turned around and began to follow the criminals. The kidnappers ignored the officers' demands to stop and sped up to 150 km/h. With the bad weather and slippery roads, the situation was extremely dangerous. The criminals trying to escape from the police drove past a checkpoint. Several patrol cars joined the chase, and about half an hour later, the criminals got stuck on an embankment. They attempted to climb out to flee. Meanwhile, Linne and Trish seized the opportunity to escape, ran towards the police. When the hostages are safe, a brief shootout ensued. Linne pleaded with the police to handle the attackers who had killed her mother, father, and grandmother. The criminals surrendered immediately. Both were detained without sustaining injuries. Meanwhile, doctors arrived quickly by helicopter to take Rolf to the hospital. They fought to save his life. Despite being attacked in the face and then in the back of the head, Rolf miraculously survived the attack and remained conscious for most of it. He later recovered without experiencing severe consequences from his injuries. Right after that, firefighters fought the fire. The house did not burn down completely, but the property was seriously damaged. When the police arrived at the crime scene, they described it as the most terrible thing they had seen during their work. There was blood all around. With the bodies of the victims left inside the house, was a terrible smell of burnt corpses' flesh. Here they find cameras recording footage of the criminals holding the victims and laughing at them. Based on camera footage, the criminals were arrested, and they are only 25 years old. The killer himself, Von Taylor, had curly hair and was the instigator. Both guys had served time in the Utah State Prison before this crime. In there, Taylor for burglary and arson, while his partner, Edward Deli, had less serious charges. They met each other in a rehabilitation center where they were sent shortly before the end of their prison term. Here, they were prepared to start life from scratch without crime. However, instead, a cunning and bloody plan was born in the minds of the criminals. They escaped from the rehabilitation center instead of integrating into society. On December 14, the thugs hitchhiked to Oakley, where Taylor's father had his own house. There, they spent about a week planning the robbery. In fact, on the day of their arrival at Tidy's house, Kay saw a suspicious guy in the parking lot. Without outerwear, he was just examining the nearby houses in search of another target for robbery. Kay and Beth immediately attracted his attention. On December 22, the criminals broke into the house of the Teedy family when they left for the city. The attackers behaved like the owners, even having fun murders and thefts. They decided to use Trish and Linnae as human shields, planning to get to New York, then get rid of the hostages and disappear into the big city. On January 22, Taylor and Deli were officially charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, and 2 counts of aggravated kidnapping. In addition, there are other crimes including theft, arson, and resisting arrest, not to mention escaping from a correctional facility. Both immediately said they had mental problems. However, the examination did not reveal any mental abnormalities in them. They were simply stalling for time. 5 months later, Taylor pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder in exchange for all other charges being dropped. Taylor admitted at trial that he was the mastermind behind all of this. He attacked Beth and Kay and felt no remorse. The medical examiner found that Kay had 5 wounds, and Beth also was struck by 3 bullets. Rolfe was attacked in the face and then doused with gasoline. When Rolfe entered the courtroom, Taylor recognized him. Taylor's face was frozen in surprise, even cursed, and could not believe that Rolfe had survived. Ultimately, Taylor was sentenced to death. Despite the confession of the mastermind, Edward Deli pleaded not guilty and decided to appear in court. 2 weeks after Taylor was convicted of murder, Deli's trial began. He had no idea that Rolfe had survived, but he from the very beginning showed remorse and insisted that he was not involved in the deaths. He did not kill anyone. According to him, the original plan was to rob, and Deli did not expect that Taylor would start killing. He refused to shoot anyone. Naturally, the prosecution tried to portray Deli as exactly the same cruel person as Taylor. He insisted that he could not pull the trigger. This meant that Rolfe, who had witnessed the events, could be the defendant's only chance to escape from a lethal injection. Deli's lawyer tried every way to present a favorable picture for him. Linnae also testified in court. She remembered how Deli brought a dog into her room, saying that it should calm her down. Also, he talked to her and Trish to reassure them. It was he who told them to get out of the car when the car stopped. When the court agency discussed finding Deli guilty of second-degree murder, it meant that he received a life sentence, but with the right to parole. The Teedy family filed a lawsuit against the state. They wanted compensation for the deaths of Kay and Beth. According to the survivors, it was the state leadership that was to blame for the escape that the prisoners made from the rehabilitation center, because this led to the bloody massacre. In fact, the claims were quite justified. It became known that on December 22, Von Taylor called his friend named Scott Manley. He told Scott that he and Deli had escaped from a rehabilitation center and also stolen a weapon. Scott admitted that by that time, Taylor and Deli had already robbed several houses in Oakley and now intended to deal with an entire family. Scott was afraid of their intentions and immediately contacted law enforcement officers, telling them about Taylor's confessions. Despite this, the police simply ignored the message. Unfortunately, the court rejected the Teedy family's claims, and no one was punished for their negligence. In 2001, Linnae received a letter from Deli in which he asked for forgiveness. He wrote that life in prison had changed him. Before, he was just a stupid young man who followed the example of a friend who showed him a cool lifestyle. Linnae read this letter over and over again, in tears and with hatred. Finally, 10 years later, she decided to throw off the burden and wrote a response to Deli, in which she stated that she forgave him. After that, she felt much better. After the verdict was passed, Deli did not try to appeal the court's decision. Most likely, he will never be released from prison, given the severity of the crime in which he took part. Meanwhile, Taylor has filed 4 appeals. He cited various reasons, including the bias of the jury. All these absurd appeals were rejected. However, these appeals helped him repeatedly push back his execution date. Sometime later, Rolf fully recovered from his injuries and renovated the house. He now enjoys spending time remembering his loved ones. Line and Trish got married and became mothers of many children. Long after that, Rolf died of cancer surrounded by loved ones in 2008. The horrific case of the Tita family not only left an indelible mark of loss, but also shook the community to recognize the fragility of personal safety. Even in the most peaceful places, the story of Line and Trish Tide's resilience serves as a powerful reminder of the strength of the human spirit in the face of adversity. Decades have passed since the case, but the lessons from this tragedy remain relevant, highlighting the importance of justice, compassion, and the ongoing efforts to protect communities from similar atrocities. Thank you for watching. If you liked my work, subscribe to the channel, support this video with a like, and let's discuss this story in the comments. Thank you all and goodbye. Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case. A successful man, whose career began with a business background, suddenly fell into the abyss of crime when he plotted to harm the wife he once loved. The Dino Guglielmelli case is not only a story of family conflict, but also exposes the dark side of relationships marked by power and manipulation. When love turns to hate, the level of despair a person can endure is astonishing. This case reveals a dark aspect of the human soul that no one expected. Let's explore the dangerous developments behind the story of Dino. Millionaire Dino Guglielmelli and model Monica Olsson were an attractive and extravagant couple, seemingly well-matched in personality. Their marriage lasted 9 years, but as their feelings for each other diminished, they decided to divorce. Monica Olsson was born in 1981 in a small town in Canada. She came from a respectable and educated family and had aspirations of becoming a model from a young age. As a teenager, she frequently attended auditions, appeared in advertisements, and participated in fashion shows. Monica was not only photogenic, but also intelligent, holding a master's degree in international finance and speaking 7 languages. She worked diligently to succeed in the modeling industry, first moving to New York and eventually to Los Angeles to pursue acting. In the early 20s, Monica had a small role in the film Chick Where to Meet Moms. During the summer of 2003 in Los Angeles, 42-year-old millionaire Dino Guglielmelli met 20-year-old Monica. Dino was captivated by Monica's beauty and sought a serious relationship with her. Dino was born in 1961 in Washington State and grew up in a large, close-knit family with 6 siblings. He began working at a young age, helping his parents on their farm. He had a passion for music and dreamed of starting his own rock band. Eventually, he dropped out of college and moved to Los Angeles to pursue his dream of becoming a rock star. However, his music career did not bring in much money. At 20, Dino took a job as a cleaner at a waste disposal plant. Over the next 10 years, he worked his way up from cleaner to office manager and then to manager. In his spare time, Dino studied business and aimed to start his own venture. At 30, he launched a company that produced food additives and organic cosmetics. He believed that everyone wants to look young and healthy for as long as possible. His confidence in his business idea paid off. It became quite successful. At its peak, Dino's company operated 4 factories, employed around 300 people, and generated approximately $48 million in annual revenue. He enjoyed a life of luxury, owning expensive real estate and cars. Dino was previously married and had a son and a daughter, but his first marriage ended in divorce. At 42, the millionaire met Monica and fell in love with her immediately. He courted her, spoiled her, and showered her with gifts. After 6 months of dating, they went to Italy, where he proposed unexpectedly. Despite their age difference, Monica agreed to marry him. In 2004, they had a luxurious wedding in New York, and both radiated happiness. However, Dino's relatives were suspicious and thought Monica was only after his money. After the wedding, Dino and Monica moved into a beautiful mansion in Valencia, California. Their home was 650 square meters and featured 6 bedrooms, a large kitchen, a living room, and a spacious area for children. The property was over 1 hectare, complete with a swimming pool filled with seawater, a small spa, and a guest house. Initially, married life was very happy for them. They lived with Dino's older children while he focused on his business and Monica worked as a model. In 2005, when Monica became pregnant, she paused her modeling career. They soon welcomed their daughter, Vendela, and 2 years later, their second daughter, Sienna, was born. Monica was completely immersed in motherhood, but as the years passed, she realized that family was not all she wanted to devote her life to. In 2008, with her husband's support, she launched her own line of organic cosmetics called Skin by Monica Olson. She also began to gradually return to her modeling and acting career, hiring a nanny to help care for her children in their luxurious home. By 2011, Monica's career took off. She frequently traveled to Hollywood for filming, flew to New York, and worked with top designers in Milan. Often she returned home late at night when her daughters were already asleep and left early in the morning for filming again. During this time, Monica's cosmetics line became very popular, and 2 major retail chains agreed to feature her products in their stores. Monica's friend admitted that she wanted to become more financially independent and not depend on her millionaire husband, Dino. However, Dino noticed Monica's rising fame and became frustrated with her frequent absences. He preferred that she stay home, raise their children, and manage the household. Dino's older brother, Gino Guglielmelli, lived with Dino and Monica for 6 months and noticed issues in their relationship. Both Dino and Monica had strong personalities and were unwilling to compromise. Dino didn't want Monica to take part in photo shoots and started to control her, which made him increasingly domineering and aggressive. Eventually, Monica, who owned the company, decided to shut it down, leading to a halt in the supply of their organic cosmetics to stores. Dino also quit his job and increasingly spent time in clubs. By the time he turned 50, he fulfilled a childhood dream by forming his own rock band as the lead vocalist. He dyed his hair black and started wearing nail polish. He told Monica that this was his way of expressing himself and that she shouldn't be afraid, but his new look frightened her. Monica confided in her friends that his behavior had become erratic. One day, Dino fired the nanny who was very much loved by his daughters. He was uncomfortable with how close the nanny was to Monica and felt she was too devoted to her. By the end of 2011, his relationship with Monica had deteriorated. The couple was constantly arguing and could no longer live together. Dino filed for divorce and moved into a guest house on his luxurious property to reduce contact with Monica while still being legally married. During this time, he began dating various women, not waiting for the official divorce. He had several mistresses and was open about his infidelities. Meanwhile, Dino also confided in his friend Rick Furman, a 40-year-old businessman and former military man with connections. Dino expressed his desire to end things with Monica as soon as possible. He and Rick, who were business partners supplying the military with vitamins and nutritional supplements, had developed a trusting friendship. Dino expressed his concerns to Rick about Monica having affairs with both men and women. He criticized her parenting, mentioning her heavy drinking and addictive use. He confided in Rick that he feared losing his assets and custody of his daughters. He was also unwilling to pay Monica the $5,000 monthly child support He handed Rick a copy of Monica's car keys, along with details of her whereabouts. Dino requested Rick to plant addictives in Monica's car and notify the police, intending for her to be arrested and deported to Canada. Not long after, Dino submitted paperwork showing his company was financially struggling, which led to a reduction in alimony from $5,000 to $2,500. He consulted a divorce lawyer, who recommended that Dino leave Monica alone. The lawyer argued that fighting would ultimately be futile and advised Dino to just pay the alimony and focus on his own life. Frustrated, he remained unwilling to accept losing to Monica. He did not want to give her his daughters, and he did not want to share his business with her. Dino repeatedly asked his friend for help in getting rid of Monica. One day he met Rick and told him that he had infected Monica with HIV, claiming that she was now seriously ill and would soon die of AIDS. This news made Rick smile, and Dino felt happy, believing that this punishment was enough for Monica. However, in early 2012, the situation changed. In January, Dino and Monica had another argument at their mansion, which their daughters witnessed. During the fight, Monica became frightened, took the girls to her room, and locked the door. Unsure of what to do, she called the police for help. However, Dino had already called 911 first, claiming he had been hit in the face and showing the police a photo of small scratches on his neck. The police sided with Dino and arrested Monica, taking her to the police station. She spent a day in a cell with dangerous criminals. Soon, a case of misdemeanor and domestic violence was opened. Later that month, Dino obtained a restraining order against Monica, forcing her to move out of their mansion. Dino's ex-wife, Latia Devine, revealed that during their divorce, Dino accused her of domestic violence and falsely claimed she used illegal addictives. Dino was determined to keep custody of their children and succeeded in doing so. After the divorce, Latia lost custody of the children, the family home, and their joint business that produced food additives and cosmetics. Latia described Dino as calculating, mean, and heartless, believing he had slandered both her and Monica for his own gain. Unlike Latia, Monica decided to fight back. After 13 months, she proved her innocence, was cleared of all domestic violence charges, and was allowed to reunite with her daughters. In a fit of rage, Dino contacted Rick, asking him to make Monica disappear from his life forever. Dino frequently reminded Rick, calling him 5 to 10 times a week, that he needed to eliminate Monica quickly. He wanted it to appear as though she had died due to addictive-related violence. He wished for her death to be painful and brutal, even envisioning her head being severed and her body discarded in a ditch. On October 1, 2013, Dino and Rick met for lunch at a cafe. At that time, Dino knew Monica was on vacation in Mexico. During their meal, Rick informed Dino that he had hired someone in Mexico and that Monica would be dead within a few hours. When Rick questioned how the daughters would cope without their mother, Dino dismissed Rick's concerns, insisting he was a good father and would find them a new caring mother, someone much better than Monica. The friends then talked about payment. Dino promised to pay Rick $80,000 for a planned crime. He wanted to see Monica's murder reported in the newspapers. Their meeting lasted about an hour and a half, but only 15 minutes were spent discussing the crime. After the meeting, Rick said goodbye to Dino and went home. However, Rick knew that Dino would never read about Monica's death in the newspapers because he had already contacted the police. Their entire conversation in the cafe was recorded on a dictaphone that Rick had hidden under the table. Additionally, there were undercover police officers at other tables in the cafe watching them closely. Monica was thankful to Rick for not killing her. She had been hiding in a hotel in California, waiting for Dino to be arrested. On October 52, 2015, Dino was arrested at his luxurious mansion in Valencia, in front of his daughters. He was charged with attempted murder. Dino denied the charges, claiming that Rick had set him up to take over his business. He accused Rick of wanting to kill Monica so she wouldn't interfere with their business dealings, stating that Rick often complained about Monica trying to terminate their contracts with the military. While Dino was in prison, he offered a cellmate money to meet Rick. When Rick learned of this, he became scared and decided to leave California and hide. Prosecutors also discovered that Dino had secretly transferred $4.5 million abroad and was planning to escape the country with his children, but his plans fell through. As a result, he was moved to solitary confinement and prohibited from using a mobile phone. Regarding Rick Furman, the authorities was revealed during the investigation that he had served only 1 year in the Army and had a troubled military career. He was wounded and subsequently demobilized. There were some unusual aspects related to Rick in the case. For instance, the authorities was found that Rick had deceived Dino multiple times by claiming they had signed a military contract for food supplement supplies. Rick admitted to forging a signature to convince Dino that a significant commercial deal was forthcoming, hoping to distract him from negative thoughts and lift his spirits. Fortunately for Monica, Rick did not harm her. He tricked Dino into believing that this would make Dino leave Monica alone and calm down. Prosecutors thought that Dino and Rick were a bad match. They had done business together and had been friends for a long time. The judge described Rick as a chameleon. Although there were suspicions that Rick was a fraud, he was not charged with any crimes. When Dino's trial began, he continued to deny his guilt, claiming he was the victim in this situation. According to Dino, his only mistake was working too hard and trusting his friend, who turned out to be a traitor. The judge offered Dino a plea deal. Facing the possibility of life in prison, he could significantly shorten his sentence by accepting responsibility. Dino agreed and pleaded guilty to attempted second-degree murder, explaining that he could not refuse the deal because of his mother's request. In 2014, Dino Guglielmelli was convicted and received a 9-year prison sentence. Monica was dissatisfied with this outcome, stating that her life was worth more. During the court proceedings, she expressed, "The mere intent to kill is already a crime. What if I try to shoot someone but miss by half an inch? Am I still a criminal, or does the missed shot make me less guilty? Did Dino become less of a criminal because Rick intervened?" After the verdict, Monica officially divorced Dino. She realized that her primary focus now was raising their daughters, Vendela and Sienna. Following their divorce, Monica inherited a mansion in Valencia from Dino. However, she felt unsafe living in such luxury and was anxious about every little noise. Consequently, she sold the property for $3 million and purchased a more modest home for herself and her daughters. Monica attempted to restart her cosmetics business, but it was not successful. She feels that without the turmoil caused by Dino, she could have achieved a brilliant career and true success. Dino's company, Creations Garden, was sold at auction, and the proceeds were used to pay off debts. Dino served his prison sentence in California and was released in 2021. The end of the Dino Guglielmelli case is a cautionary tale of the dire consequences of ambition and immorality. A successful businessman with a multi-million-dollar company, he ended up in trouble with the law when he tried to resolve personal conflicts with violence. This story not only highlights the importance of the law in protecting people from dangerous schemes, but also reminds us that greed and selfishness can lead to the downfall of any success, no matter how great. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore, the case of Timothy McNeil. On July 19, 2007, 2 police officers responded to the home of 60-year-old Timothy McNeil on Merrick Drive in San Diego, California. Timothy had returned home around noon to have lunch with his stepdaughter, Bray Hansen. During lunch, a masked intruder entered the home and shot Timothy in front of Bray and then quickly fled the scene. Bray called 911, When the police arrived, they found Timothy lying face down on the floor in a pool of blood and was dead. Timothy was wearing a shirt but no pants, which seemed unusual. He may have been changing clothes at the time. Bray was in shock after witnessing the murder of her loved one. She was very distraught, so the police helped calm her down. Bray was the only person who survived the attack and was able to help identify the attacker. Bray was 17 at the time of the incident, and her testimony was invaluable to the police. Once her panic subsided, Bray recounted that a masked armed man entered their home. He ordered her to tie Timothy's hands and then bound her own hands as well. The attacker was aware of a safe containing money and valuables in the house and demanded that Timothy open it, but Timothy refused and was shot. The assailant then fled through the open back door. Police arrived to investigate the scene and quickly discovered a Magnum .357 revolver, which was likely the murder weapon. This weapon was sent for forensic analysis. During the investigation, police found a phone on the pool table and were puzzled as to how Bray could have dialed 911 if she was tied up and the phone was there. The police, accompanied by search dogs, thoroughly searched the areas surrounding the house in hopes of finding more evidence and witnesses. One neighbor mentioned hearing 4 loud pops but didn't think much of them at the time, not realizing they were gunshots. It wasn't until 20 minutes later, when police and special service helicopters arrived and cordoned off the area, that he understood something serious had happened. He then approached the police for more information. Many other neighbors shared similar experiences, with several providing crucial details. They reported seeing a young man run out of Timothy's house in broad daylight, climb over the fence and run down the street. During the search and inspection of the crime scene near the back entrance, police discovered 2 important pieces of evidence: scraps of dark fabric from clothing that the suspect had left behind while fleeing. Along the path leading from the house, they also found a black mask hanging from one of the trees. DNA from the suspect was likely to be present on these clothing items. It was a very hot day, and the police believed the suspect was sweating, so all these materials were sent for further examination. Forensic experts later determined that the scraps of fabric were the remains of a t-shirt the attacker may have been wearing. The gun found at the scene was confirmed to be the murder weapon and was registered to Timothy's second wife, who had died several months earlier. She had kept the gun in her nightstand, leading police to suspect that Timothy's killer was someone close to him. Timothy, a respected lawyer. His family, friends, and neighbors were shocked by his murder. When the police investigated him, they learned that Timothy had lived a clean and upright life, avoiding any connection to trouble or danger. Those who knew him considered him a devoted family man, a good friend, and a man of good humor. He was also a good lawyer, showing remarkable talent in court and not losing a case in many years. A successful lawyer may have encountered a powerful rival who wants to eliminate him, prompting police to investigate the possibility. A survey of Timothy's colleagues revealed that he had several enemies, but no one thought this would lead to such a violent attack on Timothy's home. Police suspect the motive for the crime was related to his family. Timothy had a daughter named Erin McNeil from his first marriage. Erin often mentioned that her father was very kind and skilled at solving problems. During conversations, it became clear that Timothy had been married twice. His second marriage was to Doreen, who had a child from a previous relationship. Timothy met Doreen at his law office when she sought help with her divorce. They connected over their shared experiences as divorced parents with children. Doreen's daughter, Bray, got along well with Timothy's family. She was an excellent student and aspired to become a lawyer like Timothy. Bray was also fluent in French and developed a strong bond with Timothy, who embraced her as his own daughter from the moment he met Doreen. Timothy was remembered by his family as a loving father. When his daughter Erin learned of the incident, she quickly contacted Bray. However, Erin was unable to contact she directly. Bray was being questioned at the police station to provide vital information. One detail from Bray surprised the police. She said that her attacker had used an electronic device to change her voice to sound like a cartoon character. This was unusual for such crimes, as attackers usually try to appear scary rather than funny. Another strange detail emerged during the interrogation when the name Nathaniel was mentioned. Bray accidentally mentioned the robber by this name when talking to the police. However, when the police asked further, she became nervous and denied saying so. This raised the police's suspicions. It seemed likely that Bray was hiding something, prompting them to investigate her further. Unbeknownst to her, the interrogation was being recorded, capturing everything she said. The questioning lasted several hours, after which Bray was taken to her Aunt Bonnie's house, a place she chose because it made her feel safe after the incident. The strange behavior of Bray continued to raise suspicions. Police felt that she was withholding information. When Bray saw a police sketch of the suspect, based on descriptions from neighbors who had seen him running down the street, she pointed out a difference. She mentioned that the suspect's chin looked more square, but it puzzled the police how she could know this since she hadn't seen his face during the crime. Her Aunt Bonnie overheard this comment and began to question Bray's credibility. At the station, Bray reiterated her statement, but struggled to explain how she could identify the attacker's face despite him wearing a mask. After reviewing Bray's statement, the police determined that she had lied. As a result, Bray became a potential suspect in the case. Less than 12 hours after the incident, around 11 p.m., officers arrived at Bonnie's home to arrest Bray Hansen, who was suspected of murdering her stepfather Timothy. When the officers expressed their suspicions, Bray stood up, turned around, and put her hands behind her back. She did not resist or deny her guilt. The police interpreted this as a sign that she was involved. If she were innocent, she would have resisted arrest. Bray then revealed to the police the details of a dark plan targeting Timothy. The girl insisted that she was not at fault. She mentioned that she had unwittingly become involved in a plot orchestrated by her brother Nathaniel. She recounted how Nathaniel broke into their home, restrained her, attacked Timothy, and they fought. She was so frightened at the time, so she turned away. When she heard gunshots, she assumed that Timothy had killed her brother. However, when she looked back, she realized that Timothy had been killed. Bray said she did everything she could to prevent this tragic event. She tried to convince Nathaniel not to kill her stepfather, but was unsuccessful. The news affected Timothy's biological daughter, Erin. She described her heart as truly broken. Erin could not believe that her father had been killed by people he considered close, the children of his second wife, people he raised as family. He had given them a good life, and they had repaid him with betrayal that led to his tragic death. The police then attempt to locate Nathaniel. Bray mentions that her brother lives in Arizona while attending a local college. They continue to interrogate her to find out the truth. During questioning, Bray confesses that she was involved in her stepfather's murder because she played a major role in a plot with her brother. She reveals that she and Nathaniel planned the murder and considered various methods, such as beating Timothy to death with a baseball bat or giving him a lethal injection. Ultimately, they chose not to carry out the act themselves and decided to hire a hitman instead. They hired a hitman and left cash, house keys, and a pistol in a small box in the yard. However, the hitman never showed up, complicating the situation. Nathaniel insisted that they had to act on their own. Bray had previously refused to go with her brother, believing that their plan would never work, while Nathaniel was determined to proceed. He therefore decided to act alone and eventually broke into the house, killing Timothy. The police did not believe Bray's testimony, suspecting that she was hiding something. The police therefore continued to pressure her with leading questions to incriminate Bray. Eventually, she became confused and admitted that she had conspired with her brother. Bray arranged to have lunch with Timothy and informed Nathaniel about it. After Timothy returned home, she and her brother tied Timothy's hands behind his back and forced him to kneel in the laundry room. In this position, Bray killed Timothy with 4 shots. After committing the crime, Nathaniel fled. At this point, it appeared that Bray tried to cry, but no tears came. Bray calmly looked the police in the eyes and coldly recounted the plot and the murder. It was upsetting to see the 17-year-old girl without any emotion and without remorse for her actions. Throughout her testimony, Bray repeatedly blamed her brother for the crime. Bray claimed that she was too scared to tell the truth when she called the police because Nathaniel had threatened her. If Nathaniel were caught, she would also go to jail. However, her explanation raised many questions. They quickly located Nathaniel in the middle of the night. Police then tracked him down and went to his home to arrest him. Police in San Diego, who were leading the murder investigation, were notified of the arrest and flew to Phoenix the next morning to question him. When questioned, Nathaniel initially remained silent and requested a lawyer. However, he quickly changed his mind and decided to speak to the police, waiving his right to legal counsel. During the conversation, he calmly provided vital information, admitting that he had been present at the scene when Timothy was killed. Nathaniel claimed that he had no real motive for the crime. Although he felt anger toward Timothy, especially after being fired from the family business, he insisted that he did not actually want his father to die. When Timothy saw Nathaniel with the gun, his stepfather begged him not to shoot and instead leave the house, promising that Timothy would not call the police. However, Nathaniel did not listen. He killed Timothy. When asked if Bray was involved in the case, Nathaniel insisted that she did not kill Timothy. The police need to determine who actually killed Timothy, which means finding out the motive behind the breakdown of Timothy's relationship with his wife's children. When Timothy met Doreen, she had a 4-year-old daughter, Bray, and a 6-year-old son, Nathaniel. Timothy took on the role of a father to them, but while Bray was bright and cheerful, Nathaniel was very challenging. Timothy made efforts to bond with Nathaniel, but he did not accept Timothy as his mother's new partner and often caused trouble. The problems worsened when Nathaniel and Bray grew up, justifying their behavior by saying that their mother had problems with alcohol, which led her to constantly dump her problems on them. When Nathaniel turned 12, he was forced to move to his grandmother's house in Arizona. There, he worked hard. As he grew older, he developed a knack for computers and became a responsible young man. Nathaniel did well in college and was looking forward to a better future. In 2006, their mother Doreen died from an overdose. This tragedy brought the children and Timothy closer together, especially Nathaniel, who tried his best to stay close to Timothy during this time. Bray had a good relationship with Timothy and often encouraged her brother to maintain a positive relationship with Timothy. Timothy supported and cared for them. Timothy had recently purchased a new computer for Nathaniel, who used it to work at Timothy's company, until an altercation resulted in Nathaniel being fired. Even so, they kept in touch, and Timothy helped him financially. Nathaniel noted that during this time, Timothy's relationship with Bray had deteriorated considerably. They used to be very close, but Bray has recently been angry and emotionally outburst towards Timothy because he started dating someone new. Bray had a few close people she could trust, and her stepfather Timothy meant a lot to her. However, he suddenly began to distance himself from her. During an interview, the police recalled that the Bray had mentioned feeling worthless because of Timothy's recent behavior, but they did not understand what it meant at the time. Now the situation has become clearer. The police discovered that shortly before Doreen died, Timothy had begun a romantic relationship with Kim Mara. This made Bray extremely angry with Timothy, as Bray considered him her own and feared that he would completely cut her out of his life. This was a huge blow to Bray, as she truly loved her second father, but felt that she was becoming meaningless to him. The most shocking moment was when he canceled his birthday party to spend time with his new girlfriend. Nathan claimed he was not in San Diego when the crime occurred, but this was false. DNA evidence found on a mask nearby matched him, and his phone's geolocation confirmed he was at the scene. Neighbors who witnessed a young man fleeing also described Nathaniel, indicating he was present during the crime. Police suspect both Nathaniel and Bray of having something to do with Timothy's death. They have been charged with first-degree murder, including serious aggravating circumstances. The prosecutor's office claims that Timothy was lured into a deadly trap, and as a result, they face life in prison without the possibility of parole. 2 years have passed since Timothy's death, and Nathaniel and Bray are in prison awaiting trial. At the time the trial began, Bray was 19 and Nathaniel was 21. They were tried as adults, but separately. Bray's trial took place first, then Nathaniel's. During Bray's trial, she initially refused to testify against her brother. This situation was complicated by the evidence surrounding the murder. Neither the crime scene nor the weapon had any fingerprints or DNA that belonged to Nathaniel. The prosecutor convinced the jury of Nathaniel and Bray's guilt using circumstantial evidence. This included a mask with Nathaniel's DNA on it and a witness description that identified him as the person who fled the scene of the crime. The jury deliberated all day and ultimately returned a surprising verdict. The jury found Bray Hansen guilty and Nathaniel Gann not guilty. This meant that Bray would face a retrial, much to the prosecutor's disappointment. Meanwhile, it was revealed that the police had failed to provide the prosecution with a recording of Nathaniel's crucial interrogation, in which he confessed to the murder. This recording could have significantly changed the outcome of the case. The judge ruled that this confession could not be presented to the jury because his confession was invalid without legal representation, especially since he was a minor at the time. This was a major setback for the prosecution, as it eliminated their strongest evidence, the criminal's confession. The prosecutor's office decided on a new strategy. They would question both Bray and Nathaniel at the same time, with the goal of holding both men accountable. The evidence would be considered by 2 separate juries. The prosecution argued that this would prove that Bray and Nathaniel had cooperated. The defense faced challenges as well. Nathaniel was easier to defend because his confession could not be presented to the jury. In contrast, Bray's confession, which was recorded on camera, was admitted as evidence in court. The defense attorneys argued that Bray initially intended to execute the criminal plan out of revenge against their father, but later changed her mind. Meanwhile, her brother Nathaniel went through with the plan. The prosecutor's office argued that the idea for the murder came from Bray, who wanted her stepfather dead because she felt abandoned. However, Bray's attorney convinced the jury that Nathaniel had coerced her into the plan by threatening her with a gun and preventing her from escaping. The situation was complicated by numerous lies, which made the jury skeptical of the unproven claims. Additionally, Bray's confession was recorded, and the jury had the opportunity to view the video. At this point, a new character emerged, an informant who had been Nathaniel's cellmate while he awaited trial. The informant said that Bray had significant influence over Nathaniel. She initiated and convinced Nathaniel to commit the murder. The informant's testimony matched what Nathaniel said during his interrogation. However, Bray's defense was quick to point out that Nathaniel had a history of convictions for dishonesty, in an attempt to cast doubt on his testimony and sway the jury against him. To portray Nathaniel as ruthless and dangerous, Bray's lawyer brought his ex-girlfriend to testify in court. The ex-girlfriend admitted that he had abandoned her during their school days. However, she claimed that no dramatic incident had occurred. She had only come to court to take revenge on him. The final piece of evidence was a letter written by Bray on the night of her arrest. This letter was not sent to anyone because she intended to end her life after writing it. In the letter, she indicated that killing Timothy would be easy, quick, and clean. Bray confessed her guilt in this letter and expressed that she never intended to back out of the plot. The trial lasted 2 weeks, and the jury, who will review the evidence and reach a verdict. Bray was indifferent to the outcome, saying she had thought about taking her own life since she was 11 years old. The jury returned a swift verdict in Bray's case, taking just 6 hours to decide. In contrast, the jury in Nathaniel's case deliberated for 2 days, as they found his guilt to be a more complicated matter. Ultimately, both were convicted of first-degree murder. Nathaniel Gann was sentenced to life in prison, but eligible for parole after 25 years. Bray Hansen, on the other hand, received a harsher sentence because the jury determined that she was the one who set him up, which was considered an aggravating factor. As a result, she will spend the rest of her life in prison without parole. Timothy's family was pleased with the verdict. Timothy's biological daughter, Erin, expressed sympathy for Nathaniel and Bray. Erin noted that she grew up mostly with her mother and had less contact with her father than Bray and Nathaniel. Erin got married on the first anniversary of Timothy's death. The date had been set before the tragedy, and the couple decided not to postpone the wedding. In 2015, Bray successfully appealed her sentence, which was reduced to 26 years. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Corey Brininger. Judith Hawkey was born on January 9, 1967, and grew up in a rural area of Ohio, USA, with her parents. She was a bright and cheerful child until a tragic accident changed her life. At the age of 3, Judith was hit by a car and suffered serious injuries, which took a long time to recover. During this time, she lost contact with her friends and had difficulty studying. Fortunately, she eventually fully recovered and returned to normal life. However, her family life was troubled. Her parents had a difficult relationship and ended in divorce. After the divorce, Judith's mother moved to another city and remarried. Unfortunately, her mother's second marriage was not as good as her first. Because of the distance, it was difficult for Judith to maintain a relationship with her biological father. As Judith grew older, she often thought about moving away, but her mother forbade her until Judith was 18. The tense atmosphere at home created many challenges for her, but Judith was determined not to accept her situation. While in high school, Judith felt it was time to make significant changes in her life. At 17, she dropped out of school and moved to Arizona to live with her biological father. However, she did not stay there long. She began dating a boyfriend and moved to Alaska with him. The daily challenges took a toll on their relationship, and they eventually returned to Ohio together. In 1991, the couple realized that they could not work through their problems and decided to separate. Judith then began a new relationship with a man named Cott. Their relationship developed quickly, leading to pregnancy and marriage. They welcomed a daughter together, and for a few years, their relationship seemed stable. However, just as quickly as their romance began, it ended and they divorced. In 1998, she met Robert Brininger, a divorced man who lived with his son Corey, whose mother had abandoned them. Judith and Robert began dating. Robert and Corey lived in a small house in the small town of Man, Ohio. Judith quickly became attached to both of them and eventually moved in with them. Judith and Robert later married, and it seemed that Judith had finally found happiness. The three of them lived happily together. This brought great joy to Robert, who had long wanted to have a complete family. Robert worked long hours, which meant that he could not spend much time with his son. His wife Judith took care of the boy. Robert worked at a metallurgical plant in a nearby city, where he often had to work night shifts, which left him very tired. He was used to going to bed around noon and always wearing earplugs to block out any noise while he rested. During this time, Judith focused on taking care of her son and managing the household. It seemed that the family situation had improved and everyone was comfortable until the tragedy happened. On November 3, 2003 in the afternoon, 10-year-old Corey got off the school bus and started walking home. That day, Judith met him at the bus stop, which was unusual. Corey got off the bus with some classmates who lived nearby, just before 4 p.m. Judith took Corey to their home, where Robert was resting after his night shift. Corey went inside, but Judith did not go in. Instead, she took some of the other children home, worried about their safety. Corey went into his father's room and, while playing, accidentally pointed a loaded pistol at his father's head and pulled the trigger, killing him instantly. After the incident, Corey called 911 and told the police that he had accidentally fired a gun at his father. At only 10 years old, Corey did not realize that his harmless prank could lead to such tragic consequences. Shortly after, Judith ran into the house, horrified by the scene before her eyes. When the police arrived at the house, Corey was in shock. He quickly confessed to the police that the incident was accidental. He pointed out where he had taken the weapon. Robert died from his injuries before the ambulance and police arrived. Initially, a forensic scientist examined the scene and said that it is unlikely that a child would practice using a weapon in his sleeping father's room. Forensic evidence showed that the weapon was only inches from Robert's head, which contradicts the boy's story. It seems absurd to bring murder charges against a 10-year-old. Corey was always considered a good boy. Despite the inconsistencies discovered during the investigation, the police accepted the boy's story as true. Corey was not charged with murder and did not face any consequences for the incident. The police did not consider the possibility that anyone else was involved. It was also noted that after Robert's death, Judith, as his beneficiary, received a substantial $500,000 insurance payout. She then took Corey out of town. In October 2011, Judith married a man named Harry. He adopted both her and her adopted son, Corey. Harry was deeply moved by Judith's past, including her tragic relationship with her ex-husband and her adoption of Corey. It seemed like Judith's life was getting better. However, in March 2012, Corey suddenly revealed to one of his teachers what really happened that tragic day with his biological father. He revealed that the incident involving his father was not an accident. His revelation shocked the teacher, who then shared it with other colleagues. Corey spoke to several teachers at the school, sharing details of the tragedy involving Robert. He holds Judith responsible for his father's death, claiming that Judith deliberately gave him the weapon and forced him to kill his father. The teachers at the school reported this information to the police, who were shocked by Corey's account and decided to interview him directly. Corey gave them a detailed explanation of his story. Corey claimed that Judith had lied to him. She shared a story about Robert suffering from a serious malignant brain tumor. She convinced Corey that the doctors could not save his father because the disease was too advanced and that he would soon die. She also mentioned that his father had talked to her about wanting to die, as it would allow his family to quickly collect a substantial life insurance payout. She argued that this would ensure their financial security after his death, and she implied that death was his final wish. Corey reluctantly agreed. Corey confessed that on the day of the incident, Judith had met him at the bus stop after he had returned from school. She had given him specific instructions, telling him that weapon was in the laundry room and loaded. Robert was asleep and seemed resigned to death. The plan was for Corey to get weapon and kill his father as a way to end his suffering. Although Corey was hesitant, Judith convinced him. She assured Corey that because of his age, he would not face consequences if he killed someone, meaning that their family could escape legal consequences. It was all part of a carefully planned plan laid out by Judith. She instructed him on how to interact with the police and what to say to them. Judith followed her instructions exactly. After the incident, Corey suffered no consequences. But over time he began to realize that he had made a terrible mistake. Corey discovered that Robert was not sick and that Judith had been lying to him. Corey confessed that she had been abusive to him. Judith even created situations where he could be harmed and encouraged him to jump from high places. One Halloween night, she threw him into a pond while he was in costume, hoping he would drown. Corey believed that Judith had done everything she could to get rid of him. Corey shared vital information with the police, revealing that Judith's new target was her husband, Harry, whom she had been trying to poison for years. According to Corey, she had repeatedly added suspicious powders to Harry's coffee in an attempt to harm him. Corey's revelations shocked the police, prompting them to take a closer look at his claims. They decided to bring Judith in for questioning. Judith was furious at Corey's accusations and denied any involvement in Robert's murder or the attempted murder of Harry. She claimed that Corey's stories were a figment of his imagination. However, her denials did not inspire confidence in the police, and they continued their investigation. In March 2013, Judith was arrested and charged with insurance fraud, aggravated murder, and 4 counts of endangering the life of a child. She pleaded not guilty to all charges. The trial began on October 28, 2013, with Corey serving as the prosecution's star witness. He testified about the deceit and cruelty he experienced from his stepmother Judith. Several teachers testified in court that they had seen bruises on Corey's body and initially thought they were due to his carelessness. However, as the bruises became more frequent, they began to question the situation. However, no one saw Judith abusing Corey or putting him under physical or mental pressure, as he claimed. Judith's attorneys argued that there were no documented cases of Judith's cruelty reported to police or doctors, and that the teachers' opinions were based solely on Corey's testimony. After his father's death, Corey did not identify Judith when he spoke to police. They observed both Corey and Judith closely, but did not notice anything unusual in their behavior or relationship. Corey appeared calm around Judith, and there were no signs of fear or tension between them. At the time, Corey had no bruises. There was no direct evidence against Judith in the police records, but Corey's testimony had a significant impact on those involved in the trial. On November 8, 2013, the jury found Judith Hawkey guilty on all charges, and she was sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. Corey spoke to the media, claiming that Judith had finally gotten the punishment she deserved. He said he had carried this burden for years and had suffered cruelty. However, the situation took another turn. In 2016, she and her attorneys filed an appeal that was accepted. The judge determined that the 3 key witnesses who testified against Judith in the first trial had based their testimony primarily on Corey's account. Although none of these witnesses were found to be biased, the defense highlighted numerous discrepancies between Corey's testimony and the actual evidence collected at the crime scene. Judith explained that the boy was angry with his father because he was sending him to military school due to his poor grades. Corey objected to this decision, but Robert persisted. Judith claimed that this situation was the motive behind the murder. A new trial was scheduled, and upon learning of this, Corey vowed on social media to fight for his freedom and independence. He vowed to do everything he could to keep Judith in prison. During the retrial, Judith maintained her innocence and accused Corey of fabricating stories against her. Many of her supporters believed that she was innocent and was wrongly convicted due to lack of evidence. On the other hand, some believed that Judith actually pressured Corey to kill his father. On the day of the murder, a neighbor saw Judith meet Corey at the bus stop, which was unusual as she had never done so before. She helped him and even hugged him, which was out of character for her, as she usually interacted with Corey and others in a rather cold manner. However, this time, she seemed much kinder and more affectionate than usual. When police arrived at the scene, Judith tried to calm Corey down and maintained a calm and affectionate demeanor, which was unusual for her. The day after Robert's death, Judith contacted the insurance company and quickly gathered all the necessary documents to file an insurance claim. In a short time, she received $500,000 from Robert's life insurance policy. This quick action and her apparent lack of grief set off alarm bells for the police. A key incident involved Corey climbing a scaffolding platform at Judith's request, causing him to fall from a height and sustain multiple injuries. Medical records confirm this. Corey accused Judith of causing the fall by urging him to climb. The medical team that treated his injuries found no signs that he had been regularly beaten or abused. Additionally, Corey alleged that Judith removed him from the medical center before he completed his treatment. However, a review of the center's records did not substantiate his claims. In fact, he completed his entire treatment only after Judith took him home. Documentation from specialists showed that he did not suffer any serious injuries or health problems and that he was properly discharged. Judith was monitored by Social Security, and subsequent examinations did not find any signs of bruising or abuse that Corey reported. Corey said that his stepmother did not feed him, but medical reports did not mention any signs of malnutrition, exhaustion, or similar problems. The police then spoke to a psychiatrist who was treating Corey. During his treatment, Corey told the doctor that he often slept in the laundry room because his mother wouldn't let him sleep. He had mentioned that he didn't have a bed, but the Supreme Court found this to be false. He did have his own room, and many photographs confirmed this. Corey's accusations that Judith had tried to poison her new husband, Harry, were unfounded. Harry underwent a toxicology test, which showed that he was healthy and no poison was detected. Corey then admitted for the first time that he had lied. He wasn't sure if Judith had actually put poison in Harry's coffee or if it was sugar. The police then noticed striking similarities between Corey's story and a book about child abuse. The author of this book had been abused for a long time as a child, which raised the possibility that Corey's account was based on the book. Corey spoke about his experiences of being bullied by Judith, and his story seemed to match a book he had read. He claimed that he had endured years of harsh treatment and had noticed that his loved ones had become increasingly aggressive over time. The lawyer pointed out that Judith had denied Corey food and thrown him into a pond were false. The defense suspected that Corey had lied about Judith's involvement in his father's murder, believing that Corey was simply trying to draw attention to himself. Initially, despite some inconsistencies, Corey was considered a credible witness. Over time, however, he began to be seen as unreliable due to his frequent lying and constant changing of his story, which he apparently based on a book about a bullied child. Many people saw Judith as a cruel woman, leading them to assume that she was guilty. Locals did not believe that Corey had willingly taken up arms and killed his father. To them, he seemed like a good kid, and they accepted his story without question, ignoring the inconsistent statements and the lack of any evidence against Judith. As part of a plea deal arranged by the prosecution, Judith Hawkey was sentenced to 10 years in prison, of which she served 5. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we will delve into a new case. The case of Bridget Frisbie. Bridget Frisbie was born in December 1993 in Katy, Texas, USA. Shortly after her birth, her parents abandoned her, and she was placed in an orphanage. When Bridget was 18 months old, Robert Frisbie and Catherine visited the orphanage. After years of trying without being able to have children, they decided to make Happy the baby abandoned by her parents. Catherine had always longed for a daughter, and from the moment she first met Bridget, she felt a deep connection. Without hesitation, Robert and Catherine decided to adopt Bridget. From then on, they providing Bridget with a family full of love and protection. Bridget was an active and kind-hearted child. From a young age, she developed a passion for horseback riding, poetry, and painting. Her positive and friendly nature helped her make many friends. Her adoptive parents often wondered how her biological parents could have abandoned such a wonderful child. However, despite her cheerful demeanor, Bridget faced significant challenges throughout her life. When Bridget was 10 years old, her adoptive mother passed away after battling a long-term illness for several years, despite always being cared for and encouraged by family. Catherine's death was a devastating loss for Bridget, who had seen Catherine as her real mother. During this difficult period, father and daughter grew closer, supporting each other as they navigated their grief. Robert deeply loved his daughter, and over the years, they built a warm and trusting relationship. As Bridget grew older, her rebellious nature became more and more evident. Robert struggled to keep up with her boundless energy, but she continued to embrace life with enthusiasm. Despite their differences, they maintained a close and loving relationship. Bridget was an active and lively student. She excelled academically and had ambitious dreams for the future, much to her father's delight. She aspired to attend college and build an independent life. On April 3, 2011, a group of teenagers were riding motorcycles along the edge of a Texas forest. This was a strip of land planted near the family's home. The area was usually used for riding dirt bikes and ATVs. Towards the end of the trip, the young athletes saw something suspicious off to the side of the trail. Venturing slightly into the woods, they made a horrifying discovery: a human body. Realizing the importance of preserving evidence, the group refrained from disturbing the scene. They observed blood on the girl's clothes and head, and it appeared that someone had attempted to hide the body by covering it with branches and leaves. However, the concealment was so poorly done that the body was visible even from a considerable distance. The police were immediately called to the scene, where the high school students waited for their arrival. None of the teens recognized the girl. The officers discovered that the victim had no identification, making it impossible to determine her identity at the time. During a cursory inspection of the area, the detectives assumed that the massacre had been carried out right there. The victim had been attacked and left in the forest. A forensic examination later confirmed that there were no signs of abuse violence, and all of her belongings, including valuables, were still with her. This ruled out robbery and abuse assault as motives, so they suspect that the attack was related to personal hostility or jealousy. The police immediately investigated the victim's identity. They noticed the victim appeared to be just under 20 years old. She was found lying on the ground, partially covered with branches and dirt. A large wound to the head was the only visible injury, indicating a fatal blow that killed the young schoolgirl on the spot. The wound was caused by a 9mm bullet at close range, which passed through her head. Near the body, investigators discovered an empty 9mm ammunition box. This was the only clue with which the detectives had to start searching for the culprit of the tragedy. While examining the crime scene, investigators noticed another peculiar detail. A few meters from the body, a small patch of the forest floor had its top layer of soil removed, leaving a bare spot. It appeared as though someone had started digging, but stopped abruptly. The reason for this was unclear. It was possible the killer had intended to bury the body but was interrupted or frightened away. However, the police acknowledged that this detail might have been unrelated to the girl's murder. To identify the deceased, investigators began reaching out to local residents. They went door to door, speaking with people who lived near the forest. News of the brutal murder quickly spread through the community, causing widespread concern. The police used the media to inform the public about the incident, which had occurred just a few hundred meters from some homes, leaving families horrified. Such a crime was unprecedented in their peaceful area. Residents were asked if they had noticed any suspicious vehicles or unfamiliar individuals heading toward the forest or behaving strangely. Meanwhile, deputies from the sheriff's department visited dozens of homes and interviewed numerous witnesses. However, no valuable information emerged on the first day of the investigation. Just as the officers were beginning to lose hope of finding a helpful lead, a woman from a nearby settlement provided a significant clue. She explained that the night before the body was found, she had been relaxing with friends in her backyard. Between 2 and 3 a.m., she heard a loud noise resembling an explosion. Her friends also confirmed hearing the same sound. According to the witnesses' recollections that night, no one attached much importance to this extraneous noise since she lived next to a forest area and knew that it could have been hunters. Moreover, the noise seemed distant, and she wasn't even sure if it was a bullet sound. Despite the efforts of law enforcement, no additional information surfaced. The police returned to the station and began searching their database to determine if the murdered woman was listed as missing. Given the circumstances, it was likely her details had been added only a few days earlier. Unfortunately, during these checks, officers were unable to identify the victim found in the forest. The case took a turn the next day. On the morning of April 4, 2011, Robert Frisby went to the sheriff's department to report that he hadn't been able to contact his 17-year-old daughter, Bridget, for over a day. He was deeply concerned, especially after hearing about a body discovered in the nearby forest, not far from their home. At this time, the identity of the body remained unknown, so detectives immediately communicated with Robert. He revealed that he had been unable to reach his adopted daughter, Bridget, through her mobile phone or social media since the previous evening. Bridget had planned to spend the night at a friend's house 2 days before Robert reported her missing to the police. Robert believed she was mature enough to make such plans and assumed she had intended to meet her boyfriend that night. He didn't object to her having fun. However, after leaving home, Bridget failed to contact her father. She didn't confirm her arrival, let him know how she was, or even say goodnight. This lack of communication was unusual, as their family shared a warm and trusting relationship. According to Robert, such behavior seemed uncharacteristic and caused concern. Robert was aware of an unwritten rule often followed by the police: they are unlikely to act on a disappearance reported earlier than 24 hours after the person goes missing. With this in mind, he decided to wait before going to the police station. During this time, he repeatedly tried contacting his daughter on her mobile phone and reaching out to her friends, but all his efforts were met with silence, without any clue. When Robert provided detectives with a description of his daughter, they immediately noted Bridget's striking resemblance to the body they had found. Robert was shown photographs from the scene of the incident and heartbreakingly confirmed that it was Bridget. She was wearing the same clothes she had on when she left home. The discovery was an emotional devastation for Robert. Years earlier, he had lost his wife to a serious illness and still deeply missed her. His daughter had been his source of hope and joy, but now that light was gone too. With this confirmation, the victim was officially identified. The police then questioned Robert to piece together the events. Robert said that he last saw his daughter on April 2, 2011, when she was still at home. He had just bought her a pair of soft blue leggings, which she tried on before going out for a walk. That evening, Bridget's friend, Kendall Suo, came over for dinner with the family. After the meal, the two girls asked Robert to take them to a party. He agreed, but when they arrived, they discovered that the club was closed to young people. Unable to attend, Robert took the two girls home at around 10 p.m. Kendall left shortly after, picked up by another young man who planned to return home by midnight. Bridget and Kendall had planned to go to the bus stop to meet Bridget's boyfriend. However, Robert did not wait for the young man to arrive and went to bed. He set his alarm for midnight, and when he woke up, he found Bridget still at home. She told him that her friend was late, which worried her. Robert reassured his daughter and told her to go to bed. After seeing Bridget start getting ready for bed, he locked the door and went back to sleep. At around 3 a.m., Robert woke up feeling uneasy. He checked around the house and realized that Bridget was not there. Thinking she might have gone out with friends, he left the garage door unlocked so she could get inside without waking him. When he tried to call her to ask when she would be home, he realized that he couldn't find his phone. He thought that his daughter might have taken his mobile phone so as not to leave home without a means of communication. He tried using the internet and social media to contact her, but she didn't respond to his calls or messages. Concerned, Robert attempted to track his phone's location through GPS to ensure his daughter was safe, but he couldn't manage to do so. His anxiety grew as he realized she was unlikely to stick to her curfew. He decided to wait until morning, hoping she would return and resolve the situation on her own. Unfortunately, when he woke up on next day, Bridget was still not home. Robert began calling several of her friends and contacts, but no one could tell him exactly where she was or what had happened. By that evening, he read online that a group of teenagers on motorcycles had discovered the body of an unidentified girl near his family home. This news made Robert even more anxious. Although he tried to push away the distressing thoughts, the possibility that his daughter might be the victim tormented him. The next morning, he went to the police station and confirmed that the murdered girl was indeed his daughter. The devastating news left him shattered. He became unable to sleep or focus on work and even started keeping a loaded weapon by his bedside. After Robert's testimony, the detectives finally had their first lead. The suspect was Kendall So, a school friend of Bridget's, with whom she had spoken on the evening before her disappearance. Bridget's father stated that he had known Kendall for a long time and had never observed any signs of aggression or dangerous behavior in him. According to Robert, Kendall was a responsible high school student with no history of criminal activity or bad influences. He was well behaved, a good student, and always treated Bridget with respect. Her father felt confident trusting his daughter with Kendall, believing she was safe in his company. Robert was certain that Kendall could not be the killer. In contrast, Robert believed that a more likely suspect was Bridget's ex-boyfriend, Valley Jonathan Eason. From the start, Bridget and Jonathan had a troubled relationship. Jonathan was a bad influence and was suspected of using soft-banned substance. He was frequently involved in problematic incidents and had a history of provoking conflicts. From the beginning of their acquaintance, he often displayed threatening behavior. Later, a third person came into the picture, Zach Richards, another old friend of Bridget's, with whom she had started dating shortly before her death. Based on Robert's testimony, investigators quickly identified several suspects who needed to be thoroughly investigated. Detectives immediately began questioning these young men to determine their whereabouts at the time of the murder. The first person they approached was Kendall, one of the last people to see Bridget alive. Kendall had no prior issues with the law. When contacted by the police, he willingly agreed to come to the station and provide his statement. He confirmed Robert's account, explaining how he visited Bridget's house and then went to the club with Bridget. According to Kendall, he left the house shortly after Robert dropped them off at the club. He claimed that their plans had suddenly changed because another friend was to join them. Kendall expressed his willingness to cooperate with the investigation and agreed to provide DNA samples and fingerprints as needed. He also mentioned that on the evening in question, Bridget was upset due to a recent argument with her ex-boyfriend, Jonathan Eason. Bridget and Jonathan had been in a relationship for several months, but it had been troubled from the start. Jonathan often accused her of cheating, which eventually led to their breakup. However, he seemed to hold a grudge against her and would use any chance to hurt her feelings. The situation was further complicated because they attended the same class. The police verified Kendall's alibi, which checked out. Despite this, they kept him on the list of suspects and decided to scrutinize some of his statements further. The next person the detectives investigated was Bridget's ex-boyfriend Jonathan Several witnesses from Bridget's close circle had mentioned him during their interviews. When the police attempted to contact Jonathan, they couldn't reach him. They decided to visit his home, but upon arrival, they found the house empty, with signs suggesting it had been abandoned in a hurry. This discovery raised serious concerns. The back wall of the family home was covered with round holes resembling bullet holes. Based on the number of holes, investigators concluded that the bullet holes were either from a semi-automatic weapon or the attacker has been deliberately impacting the front of the house for a long time. During their investigation, they discovered that about a week before Bridget's murder, Jonathan had been targeted by 3 unknown individuals in a car. They had opened attack on him, but he managed to hide in his room, avoiding injury. Following the attack, Jonathan reported the incident to the police. Despite the investigators' best efforts, the case remained unsolved. The only evidence collected at the scene were spent cartridges and several bullets. Neighbors revealed that Jonathan moved out the day after the attack, fearing for his safety. The police suspected that these events might be connected. On March 14, the active phase of the search for Jonathan began. He became the main suspect in this case. By that time, detectives had already managed to visit the school where he studied. Bridget also studied there. The administration reported that Jonathan had not been in class in recent days. Investigators decided to talk to other students from his class. Police officers tried to find out where Jonathan went after the attack. Detectives met Alexander Olivieri, who introduced himself as a close friend of Bridget. According to him, they had recently met, and since then, they often communicated. Alexander immediately said that during her relationship with Jonathan, Bridget repeatedly feared for her life and health, as Jonathan behaved aggressively. Even after their breakup, Jonathan continued to pursue her. They often saw each other at school, and Jonathan did not miss the opportunity to offend her. All this often ended in quarrels and confrontations. Bridget just wanted to forget about the relationship and the unpleasant breakup, but her ex-boyfriend prevented this with all his might. According to Alexander, Jonathan was capable of causing harm to Bridget. Investigators tried to find out where Alexander was on the night of Bridget's murder. According to him, he was supposed to meet her that very night. They were going to pick up her boyfriend, Zach Richards, from the bus station. Zach was returning from visiting relatives who lived in a neighboring state. Alexander claimed that he arrived late to Bridget's house with another friend named Alan Perez. Bridget had promised to wait for them near the house, but he did not see her anywhere. She ignored their calls, so they left, assuming she had either already gone to bed. They met Zach and drove around the city for several hours before returning home at around 5 a.m. According to the forensic expert, by that time, Bridget had already been killed. Alexander learned of Bridget's death from the news. Detectives then questioned Alan, who told a similar story. However, his version slightly differed. He claimed that after meeting Zach, they played computer games all night and did not drive around the city. These discrepancies raised suspicions. Detectives added Alexander and Alan to the list of suspects, as their stories did not align, and no one could confirm their alibis. Nevertheless, Jonathan remained the main witness investigators wanted to question. Detectives quickly discovered that Jonathan's mother had not left the city after the attack on their home. Instead, she had moved in with a family friend for a while her son was sent to relatives in Austin, Texas. Law enforcement officers quickly found Jonathan's mother, who admitted that her son often got into trouble because of his bad character. She confirmed that the attack on the house was clearly directed against him, as the bullets were aimed at the side of the house where his room was. According to her, Jonathan had gotten into a fight before the attack, so the attackers were most likely connected to this incident. Unfortunately, it was not possible to prove this during the investigation. The relationship between Jonathan and his mother was far from ideal. Despite sending him to Austin, she did not keep in touch with him and did not know his exact whereabouts. However, she provided the police with an address to help them begin their search for Jonathan. Help for the investigation came from an unexpected source. Alan's lawyer approached the police and stated that his client had important information regarding the case. Alan was willing to provide this information in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Detectives considered the information potentially useful and agreed to the terms. According to Alan, there was a direct connection between Bridget's murder and the drive-by attack at Jonathan's house. Alan revealed that both he and Alexander had joined the National Guard, where they learned how to handle weapons. After mastering basic skills, Alexander continued his education at school and met Bridget. Bridget confided in Alexander about her problems with her ex-boyfriend, Jonathan. Together, they came up with a solution. According to Alan, in the incident that happened at Jonathan's house, it was Bridget who directly acted. Alex used his semi-automatic weapon, while Alan was also present in the car but only as an observer. Unfortunately for the entire group, Bridget started talking too much, putting everyone at risk of being exposed. On April 2, 2011, Alexander planned to meet Bridget to confront her about how her loose talk had nearly jeopardized them all. Considering his training in the National Guard and aspirations for a career in the military, Alexander feared Bridget's behavior could ruin his future. Meanwhile, Jonathan had already reported the situation to the police, and an active investigation was underway. Before that, after completing his training, Alexander began carrying a 9mm Beretta in a holster under his clothes. That evening, Alexander and Alan went to pick up Bridget from her house. They convinced her to get into the car by pretending they will to pick up her boyfriend Zach from the bus station. Initially, Bridget refused to go, so Alexander followed her into the house, determined to get her into the car by any necessary. While this was happening, Alan hid in the back seat of the Chevrolet Suburban under a large blanket. Eventually, Alexander managed to persuade Bridget to get into the car. They drove to an isolated area. On the way, Alexander started to put pressure on Bridget and accused her of the fact that her chatter could cost them all dearly. Upon arriving at the secluded location, they walked to a nearby wooded area. Alexander brought a shovel and flashlight and, together with Bridget, entered the forest. After some time, Alan got out of the car and quietly followed them, staying far enough behind to avoid being seen by Bridget. According to Alan, Alexander forced Bridget to dig, intimidating her and insisting it was urgent. While they were digging, Alexander suddenly pulled out a weapon and aimed it at the back of Bridget's head. Alan initially thought Alexander was trying to scare Bridget as a way of teaching her a lesson, but to his shock, Alexander pulled the trigger, killing her instantly. After the murder, Alexander hurried back to the car, taking the shovel and flashlight with him. He destroyed Bridget's phone and discarded the weapon, likely somewhere in the forest. Alan was stunned and confronted Alexander, angrily accusing him of what he had done. However, Alexander threatened Alan, warning him to stay silent or face consequences. Alexander then took all the items involved in the murder back to his home. Later, around 4 a.m., they picked up Bridget's boyfriend Zach from the bus station as originally planned. That night, Alexander invited a third friend to spend the night at his place. The following day, Alexander convinced Alan to work together to create a shared alibi. They agreed to stick to their story when speaking with the police. Alexander believed this plan would deceive the detectives. To further mislead the investigation, he decided to shift suspicion onto Bridget's argumentative ex-boyfriend, Jonathan. Alan admitted that he and Alexander had willingly participated in an attack at Jonathan's house to help Bridget. However, Alexander hadn't anticipated that Bridget would tell others about the incident. According to Alan's confession, Alexander saw no other solution than to kill Bridget to protect his future. Later, investigators questioned Zach, Bridget's boyfriend. Zach confessed that he had known about the attack at Jonathan's house. He also confirmed that Bridget had started sharing the story with others. Bridget had even considered posting about it on social media to intimidate Jonathan, which enraged Alexander. He repeatedly begged Bridget to drop these plans, but she refused to listen. On the evening of the meeting, Zach knew Bridget was supposed to arrive with 2 friends, but when the car arrived, she wasn't in it. When asked about Bridget's whereabouts, Alexander said he couldn't reach her. A few days later, Zach learned of Bridget's death. Alexander Olivieri was immediately arrested, and during a search of his home, police were unable to find the weapon believed to have been used in the car attack, as well as the weapon used to kill Bridget. However, they did find instructions for a weapon model that matched the shell casings discovered at the crime scene. Investigators also recovered a shovel that Bridget had used to dig a hole in the forest before being shot. Her DNA was confirmed to be on it. A thorough inspection of Alexander's car revealed numerous fabric fibers. However, Alexander never admitted to his actions. Instead, he attempted to shift the blame onto Alan. At this time, the prosecutor's office presented strong evidence disproving his claims. During the investigation, video recordings from 2010 were uncovered, showing Alexander demonstrating his use weapon skills with the same type of weapon used to kill Bridget, and in the attack at Jonathan's house. FBI agents took an active part in the investigation. A few days before the trial, they presented the results of fiber analysis conducted on materials collected from Alexander's car. The fibers matched the artificial fur on the victim's clothing. Bridget had been wearing a bright and distinctive outfit, making it easy to trace the source of the fibers. Additional evidence has strengthened the case against Alexander. Alexander's lawyer advised him to remain composed during the trial. He chose not to testify and never confessed to the murder. His cold demeanor made him appear calculating and unfeeling. On August 1, 2012, Alexander was found guilty and sentenced to 60 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Bridget's father deemed the sentence fair and expressed hope that Alexander would never be released. As promised by the police, Alan was not prosecuted for any of the incidents described. Welcome back to our channel. Today we'll dive into a new case. The case of Kelly Bullwinkle. Kelly Bullwinkle was born in Petaluma, Sonoma County, California, United States. She is the only child of Diana Dolores Gonzalez, a Coast Guard sergeant, and Robert. When Kelly was 3 years old, her parents divorced and she lived with her mother. Despite her busy work schedule, Diana raised Kelly with love and dedication, and they often received help from Kelly's grandparents, Dolores Fuller and Jesus Gonzalez, who often traveled from Las Cruces, New Mexico to visit. Growing up, Kelly was a quiet and shy girl, but those who knew her were captivated by her delicate features. She had a deep love for animals, especially horses. Whenever she saw a horse, her face lit up with joy, and she eagerly asked her mother to keep one as a pet. Kelly was also passionate about music. She quickly learned to play the clarinet while still in elementary school, impressing everyone with her ability to perform complex pieces with incredible skill. In 1999, as Kelly prepared to start high school, Diana was transferred to Redlands, a picturesque city in San Bernardino County, California. The family moved in with Laura, a close friend of Diana's. The relocation brought major changes to Kelly's life. She had to meet new neighbors, start at a new school, and adjust to an unfamiliar environment, all of which proved difficult for her. Redlands East Valley High School, the largest in the city, and presented its own challenges. The school was divided into cliques, athletes, leaders, and laggards, making it hard for Kelly to find her place. Even walking through the noisy cafeteria at lunchtime felt overwhelming. Kelly often felt lonely and doubted her ability to fit in with her school community. To relieve stress, she turned to reading and started keeping a personal diary, which became her trusted outlet. Over time, Kelly took up mountain biking and joined the track and field team. Her dedication to sports paid off as she began to succeed in competitions. Eventually, one of Kelly's childhood dreams came true when her mother gifted her a horse as a reward for her efforts. In her third year of high school, Kelly became friends with two classmates, Rachel Schneider and Megan LeSmith. Like many teenagers, Kelly looked up to Rachel and began imitating her style. She dyed her hair red to match Rachel's, started shopping at thrift stores, and wore the same shade of red lipstick as her. In 2001, Rachel introduced Kelly to her other friends, including Kinsey Jean Nordman. Kinsey, a senior born in 1983 in Redlands, was the only child of Bruce and Deborah Nordman. Her father, a well-known local postman, and her mother, a devoted leader of a Girl Scout group, raised Kinsey in a loving and optimistic environment. From a young age, Kinsey was described by relatives as sweet, kind, and affectionate. She had a gentle nature, enjoyed football games and reading, and was passionate about helping sick and homeless animals, often turning her home into a temporary shelter for them. Her family fully supported her interests, creating a joyful and encouraging atmosphere. Birthdays were always memorable celebrations, and family trips were filled with happiness. Bruce enjoyed spending time with Kinsey's friends and often invited them on family outings. One frequent visitor to the Nordman household was Kinsey's cousin, who taught everyone how to surf. During high school, Kinsey grew close to a classmate named Damian Matthew Guerrero, born in 1983. Damian lived in a wealthy neighborhood near Redlands. Not much was known about his family, which included his mother, stepfathers, and brother. He was known for his arrogance and fascination with Gothic culture. His signature look included makeup, black and white outfits, and a vintage 1940s style hat. Girls admired him for his dark hair and enigmatic presence, while others were intrigued by his knack for turning any topic into a philosophical discussion, making conversations with him engaging. He often quoted lines from Quentin Tarantino films, as Tarantino was his idol. Even though he was weirdo, but Damian was both hardworking and academically capable. Under Damian's influence, Kelly underwent a significant transformation. She abandoned her sporty California style and adopted a Gothic look. She developed a strong interest in writing articles about serial killers. She became interested in writing about serial killers, a subject she was very passionate about. She also became drawn to industrial bands, with Tool becoming her favorite. Her favorite movie was American Psycho. She and Damian often discussed the film's characters, Mickey and Mallory, with their classmates, praising them enthusiastically. Kelly's family disapproved of the changes in her behavior and began keeping a closer eye on her social circle. However, her cousin reacted differently. He welcomed Damian and even started visiting him frequently. The two grew close, bonding over shared interests and collections. They were particularly fascinated by a mysterious weapon Damian owned, which had once belonged to Damian's brother. Over time, Diana became increasingly concerned about her daughter's friendship with Damian. Despite her mother's strong disapproval of her relationship with Damian, Kelly refused to change her mind. This caused a rift between her and her mother, further straining their relationship. Diana believed that Kelly was only trying to mock her, provoke her, and draw attention to Kelly. Meanwhile, rumors began circulating at school that Kelly and Damian's relationship was more than just friendship. In reality, however, Damian was dating another girl, Jennifer. Jennifer, born in Redlands in 1985, was known for her bold appearance and impeccable sense of style. Damian fell for her almost instantly after their first conversation. They discovered they shared many interests, particularly in music and cinema. Jennifer attended building with Kelly, while Kinsey studied in a different building. Although different, Kelly and Kinsey quickly bonded over their shared love of writing. Eventually, Kelly joined the group formed by Kinsey, Damian, and Jennifer, who welcomed her without hesitation. Kelly began adopting not only the fashion choices, but also the behaviors of her new friends. This group displayed a deliberate disregard for social norms and seemed unafraid or even eager to be rejected by society. Immersing herself in this circle, Kelly created a virtual diary on LiveJournal under the pseudonym Anna, where she portrayed herself as a girl struggling with anorexia. Though this was untrue, Kelly was fascinated by the idea of taking on this new persona. At the same time, she began experimenting with illegal substances. Despite only dabbling in them, she started labeling herself as a banned substance addict. It seemed as though Kelly was determined to showcase her darkest, most flawed side. She deliberately became provocative and destructive. Wanting to fully embrace her new identity, she distanced herself from Rachel, who quickly noticed how negatively the group was influencing her friend. However, fractures soon developed within the group itself. The conflict was fueled by Kelly's growing and uncontrollable attraction to Damien, which Jennifer easily noticed. On top of that, Jennifer was irritated by the fact that Kelly, trying to please Damien, copied his style and behavior. The tension steadily escalated, and what had once been a normal friendship between the girls devolved into open rivalry. In 2002, the group had the opportunity to become the center of attention and spark a wave of discussions, which they seemed to enjoy. That year, Kinsey and Damien graduated from high school. Meanwhile, Kelly and Kinsey came up with the idea to attend prom together. They were not a couple, but the plan was driven by curiosity to see their classmates' reactions. They think that it could possibly create a scandal. During the party, the girls told everyone they were under the influence of banned substance and tried to persuade Damien to join them. Jennifer responded quickly, opposing the idea and urging Damien to refuse. Kelly became upset, believing Jennifer was acting out of jealousy. The tension escalated when Damien's date accused Kelly of lying, pointing out that Kelly was wearing the same shoes as Damien. This led to an exchange of insults, with emotions spiraling out of control. Then, as energetic music played, Kelly and Kinsey kissed on the dance floor, drawing the attention of their classmates. Many speculated that the kiss was merely a stunt to grab everyone's attention. A few hours later, the party ended, and with it, the friends stopped trying to show their worst sides. After starting university, Kinsey and Damien remained close friends and kept in touch with Kelly as well. They often went to the cinema, explored fairs in the city center. Among them, Kelly was the only one without a partner, and Damien was still dating Jennifer. When the trio couldn't meet in person, they stayed connected through chat, where they planned their next outings or shared music and posts they enjoyed. However, due to Jennifer's jealousy, Damien sometimes acted rudely toward Kelly when they met in public. In private, though, his behavior changed, and their interactions became much friendlier. By early 2003, Damien and Kelly confessed their mutual attraction and began a secret relationship. Kelly's happiness was hard to conceal. For Kelly, Damien was the first man who had been truly serious about her, making it difficult for her to resist him. Her life began to change dramatically. Through Kinsey, she got in touch with two local banned substance dealers, Jim and Bob. At one point, Jim and Bob demanded $100 from her to pay for banned substance, but Kelly had grown accustomed to getting them for free. As her addiction worsened, she began finding other ways to sustain her habit. She secured a part-time job at a restaurant. In the spring of 2003, Kelly and Jennifer graduated from high school, but their rivalry only intensified. Now considered a love destroyer, Kelly felt an overwhelming urge to publicly declare her relationship with Damien. She enrolled at Crafton Hills, just a 20-minute drive from her home, allowing her to stay close to Damien. Meanwhile, Jennifer was determined to turn Kelly's friends against her. Jennifer manipulated Kinsey and Damien into excluding Kelly from their group and even encouraged them to humiliate her at parties, inviting her only to mock her in front of others. That summer was a nightmare for Kelly. Her friends argued with her over trivial matters, publicly mocked her, and humiliated her. What hurt even more was that she couldn't understand why they were doing it. Despite this, Kelly, being sensitive and dependent, couldn't bring herself to cut ties with them. For the first time, she wished that Damien would leave Jennifer, but the opposite happened. Damien told Kelly their relationship was over and demanded Kelly stay out of his life. One of the people who had insulted Kelly decided to reveal her secret meetings with Damien to Jennifer, hoping to expose Damien, who Jennifer was planning to build a life with. However, even Damien's betrayals didn't come as a surprise to Jennifer. On September 2, 2003, Jennifer messaged Kelly, demanding an explanation. Kelly confessed everything and received a response filled with threats. A few days later, Kinsey and Damien came up with a cruel prank to play on Kelly. Knowing how easily she got nervous, they decided to take her to San Timoteo Canyon, also known as the Ghost Town. On September 11, while texting with Kelly, Kinsey suggested they go for a walk together. Trusting her friend, Kelly agreed. The next day, Kinsey and Damien headed to San Timoteo Canyon, equipped with a shovel. They dug a deep hole, planning to scare Kelly by making her believe they were going to kill her and bury her there. On September 13, 2003, at 4:20 p.m., Kelly told her family she was going out with friends and left in her Mazda Protege. She had hidden a small bag of banned substance under the waistband of her pants. After stopping briefly at an ATM, she continued driving and met Kinsey. Together, they smoked and casually chatted while walking. Later, Kinsey suggested they grab a snack. As they approached Kelly's car, Damien suddenly arrived in his black Honda Civic. Surprised, Kelly asked what he was doing there. Damien says he has a plan and wants them to join in. After some convincing from her friends, Kelly reluctantly agreed to go to the canyon, even though she didn't like the ghost town. When they were already there, at some point Damien walked away from Kelly and Kinsey for a few minutes, and that's when Kelly found herself face to face with a grave and a shovel. She didn't have time to realize what happened, because Damien suddenly appeared in front of her again with a weapon in his hands. Later, the weapon activated unexpectedly. Seriously wounded, Kelly fell just a few steps from the pit. Kinsey became a witness of the scene. Damien began to justify himself, saying that everything happened by accident. Kelly was still alive at that time and was shaking convulsively. Damien, in a state of shock, handed the weapon to Kinsey and said that he could not do it again. Kinsey took the weapon and, without further ado, attacked Kelly in the head. After that, they put the body in a hole and buried it. Seeing an old orange sofa abandoned nearby by someone, Damien and Kinsey dragged it to a fresh grave and left the scene. In Kelly's car, near the Ontario Mills Shopping Center, they abandoned the car and keys, then changed clothes and returned to Redlands in Damien's car. A little later, they had dinner together and at 9:20 p.m. went to the cinema. Diana, Kelly's mother, was not at home at that time. She had gone to the sea. Her friend Laura was outside the city. In these circumstances, no one noticed Kelly's absence. However, when Laura returned on September 15, she discovered alarming signs: unsorted mail, lights on, and hungry pets. In addition, Kelly's answering machine had accumulated messages from colleagues who were worried about her due to her absence from work. Laura called the police. Officers began searching for Kelly and found her car within a few hours. When she received news that her daughter was missing, Diana immediately called friends and acquaintances for help. They launched a search throughout the city, the San Bernardino Valley, and the desert. The search for Kelly was assisted by a Hawk helicopter provided by the Coast Guard. The police, meanwhile, interrogated everyone who knew Kelly. The first on the list of her close friends was Kinsey. During the interrogation, she provided a reliable alibi. claiming that she had not seen her friend for a long time. She also admitted that they planned to meet on September 13, but Kelly suddenly stopped communicating. So Kinsey went for a walk with Damien. In addition, she mentioned the banned substance addiction of Kelly and gave investigators the contacts of banned substance dealers Jim and Bob, who could possibly point to Kelly's whereabouts. It turned out that the two were in custody on charges of carjacking, a fact that automatically put them at the top of the list of suspects in Kelly's kidnapping. However, once they were questioned, they began to deny any involvement in her disappearance and claimed to have an alibi. The Manns were involved in a series of crimes in the Redlands area, but had nothing to do with what happened to Kelly. Nevertheless, the police obtained a warrant to search their home and then excluded them from the case. Days passed in despair. Diana took out an ad and told the media about Kelly's disappearance. Kinsey also joined the search and supported the efforts. A few days later, a group of young men were exploring San Timoteo Canyon. Something unusual caught their attention. An unpleasant smell emanated from a cliff next to an old sofa lying in the bushes. After they reported this to the police, officers immediately arrived and secured the area. Under the sofa, human remains were found sticking out of the ground. After that, the site was examined, and a cartridge case of a 9mm caliber was found during the excavation of a female body, which was urgently sent to the morgue for the appropriate forensic analysis. Days later, a preliminary autopsy report confirmed that the deceased was Kelly and that her cause of death was one of 2 bullet wounds. Diana was shocked by the terrible news. A wave of suspicion swept across Redlands as each of the young people came under scrutiny. Those questioned all became potential suspects, and rumors of Kinsey's involvement in the murder began to spread. The police searched the house where Kelly lived and confiscated her computer, on which a lot of materials for the investigation were found, hundreds of chats, threats from Jennifer, and much more. Jennifer was also interrogated, during which she denied her guilt. Simultaneously, there was no convincing evidence against her. When investigators questioned Kelly's cousin, he revealed that he had once seen Damien holding a small silver weapon. After further questioning, Damien admitted that his brother gave him a .25 caliber weapon last fall. He claimed to have thrown the weapon into a drainage well. Detectives searched the well after Damien provided its location, but found nothing. The investigation continued, and a bullet of the same caliber was later discovered in a chest of drawers. This bullet matched the cartridge case found at the crime scene. However, without the weapon, it was difficult to formally charge Damien. On November 3, 2003, the case took a significant turn. Jennifer, Damien's ex-girlfriend, went to the authorities and provided a statement about events that had occurred during the summer involving Kinsey, Damien, and herself. The following day, Kinsey was brought in for questioning. Under pressure, she confessed to being involved but claimed the situation had spiraled out of control unintentionally. Her confession provided enough evidence for an arrest, but in exchange for more information, Kinsey was allowed to return home. Once home, she told her mother everything. Her mother, Deborah, was shocked and unable to comprehend how or why her daughter could have committed murder. She was also baffled as to why the authorities had let Kinsey go. Feeling guilty, Kinsey called her boyfriend and confessed everything, including Damien's involvement. Understanding the gravity of the situation, her boyfriend reported it to the authorities. An hour later, Kinsey was arrested, followed by Damien. Both were charged with murder and faced life in prison due to their intentional use of a firearm. Their bail was set at $5 million each to ensure their presence at the trial. On February 17, 2005, the trial of Kinsey and Damien began. The prosecution argued that the crime had been carefully planned and executed with cold-blooded precision, They emphasized that this murder was far more severe than a typical teenage dispute. In his defense, Damien maintained that he never intended to harm Kelly and claimed that Kinsey was directly responsible for Kelly's death. Kinsey's defense, on the other hand, acknowledged the enormity of her mistake, describing it as monstrous, and expressed deep remorse for causing the death of her close friend. On March 9, 2005, Kinsey was convicted of first-degree murder and using a weapon during the crime. However, the jury could not reach a unanimous decision regarding Damien's involvement, leading to a delay in his case. 2 months later, a hearing was held where the verdict was announced. The judge described the crime as one of the most tragic and senseless cases he had ever encountered. Kinsey was sentenced to 45 years in prison without the possibility of parole and was sent to a women's correctional facility at California in Chino. In May 2005, after reaching a plea agreement, Damien was sentenced to 15 years and incarcerated at Chuckawalla Valley in Blythe. Kelly's grandparents, Dolores and Jesus, were present in the courtroom, their faces showing both sadness and relief. With a trembling voice, Jesus expressed his sorrow at being robbed of the chance to see their granddaughter grow up. Dolores shared that nothing could ever fill the void left in her life. Over time, her health declined significantly, forcing her to leave her job. In February 2014, Dolores passed away. In 2018, Damien was denied parole. However, on October 24, 2019, a special commission unexpectedly approved his parole. In March 2020, California governor reversed this decision, stating that Damien still posed a serious risk to public safety. In January 2023, Damien attended his final parole hearing and was granted parole, which reignited intense debate. County attorney voiced hope that the decision would eventually be overturned. For now, Damien remains in prison, awaiting the final outcome. Kelly Bullwinkle was a model student with a promising future. Her naivety, trust in people, and desire to be accepted by others ultimately led to her death. Kelly did not doubt the trustworthiness of her friends, even after they got her hooked on banned substance and treated her cruelly. Kinsey openly rejected her, put her in a bad light, and eventually took her life in their merciless, bloody game. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Emily Murray. Emily Murray is a college student. She was born on February 19, 1980, in Sleepy Hollow, New York. Emily lives with her parents and 3 siblings, 2 sisters and a brother. They are very close and are in constant contact with each other. Emily's father works as the director of a science center. Thanks to his job, her family lives comfortably and can afford everything they need. Emily is a gifted student with a great passion for science, especially medicine and philosophy. In addition, she is a devout Christian, like her family. Since she was a child, she has helped her parents and found ways to earn money. But she often donates what she earns to charity, leaving very little for herself. After graduating from high school, Emily enrolled in Kenyon College to continue her studies. She focuses on philosophy and hopes to work for the church and participate in various missionary activities. During this time, she also traveled to Italy, New Zealand, and Japan, with each trip related to her church charity work. In 2000, Emily entered her 3rd year of college, where she studied hard and got closer to her dream. She was actively involved in church activities and participated in youth ministry. She also envisioned a large family, imagining herself with her future husband and their children. Tragically, no one expected her life to end so suddenly. On November 3, 2000, at the college Emily attended, her roommates woke up to find that she had disappeared. The girls remembered that Emily could sometimes get caught up in her work, as there were times when she stayed late to finish an important project with a friend. Emily had worked a shift at a restaurant the night before, leading to speculation that she might have stayed late and then gone straight to college to study. Her roommates, therefore, continued their normal routine, going to work and continuing their studies, expecting to see Emily later. However, she did not return that night, and they became increasingly concerned when she failed to show up at the planned party. A few days earlier, Emily had gone to the local supermarket and bought all the necessary items, indicating that she intended to attend. Emily's friends were worried and contacted Emily's sister to check if Emily had returned to her family. However, Emily's sister said that she had not returned home either. Her sister called her parents to report that Emily was missing. It had been nearly 24 hours since Emily had gone missing, and her parents were distraught when they learned of the situation. Despite their efforts, Emily's friends were unable to find any useful information. Just a few hours after her sister's call, Emily's parents got in their car and drove to her school. At that time, a group of volunteers, including dozens of students, had searched the area for Emily, but found no trace. It was also confirmed that Emily's car was missing along with her. Emily's parents went to the university security office to report their daughter's disappearance. However, they were disappointed to find that the staff did not care. The staff assumed she was just out for the night and said that their daughter would be back soon. The family believed that this was not Emily's normal behavior, as she always informed them of her plans. Not a day went by without her contacting family and friends. Now, she was unusually quiet and ignored all attempts to reach her. Emily's roommates accompanied the family to the security office, and all three emphasized that this behavior was unusual for Emily. All of Emily's belongings were still in her room, including her bank checks and a wallet full of documents and cards. This suggested that she had no intention of leaving for a long time. All of her textbooks were also left behind. Finally, the security staff agreed that a search was necessary. They decided to start by thoroughly searching Emily's room. However, they found nothing suspicious. As a result, they created a missing persons notice and began distributing flyers to students on campus. Meanwhile, Emily's family contacted the sheriff's office to report their daughter missing. The police carefully reviewed all the details surrounding Emily's disappearance and checked her room, realizing the seriousness of the situation. They began tracking her down from the evening she went missing. Emily worked at a restaurant near her school. Its proximity to the school and diverse menu made it a popular hangout for students. The restaurant was open until 2 a.m. every night, attracting a large crowd of young people. However, the police quickly realized that the late-night schedule could attract potentially dangerous individuals. Local girls knew that it was unsafe to go to the restaurant alone at night because of the many drunk and rowdy. On November 1, Emily was working her last shift at the establishment. She was well liked by everyone for her positive attitude and friendly demeanor. The police compiled a list of everyone present, as these people were likely the last witnesses to see Emily. They could provide information for the search or report any suspicious activity that night. The restaurant closed at 2 a.m., as usual. Most of the customers had left, but Emily and a few other employees stayed behind to finish their work and clean up. Among the employees was Emily's friend, a waitress, who worked with her at the restaurant. Emily's time card showed that she finished her shift at 3:07 a.m. and left the restaurant. This was confirmed by Gregory McKnight, a chef who had left earlier that night as scheduled by the staff. The staff working in the store said that at around 3 a.m., they all finished their work and started to go home. Emily's parents were frustrated by the slow pace of the investigation. Despite the collection of valuable evidence suggesting many leads to follow, some believed that Emily might have left on her own. When the police inquired about her mental health, they discovered that although she had been depressed in recent years, she did not have any serious mental health issues. This depression may have been related to her heavy responsibilities at school and work, as well as her recent breakup with her boyfriend, which further affected Emily's emotional state. After gathering all the information, the police searched Emily's dorm room. They found notes from her that contained some contradictory statements, leading them to question whether she might have taken her own life due to her depression. Emily could have made such a decision because of her mental condition. However, her family and friends dismissed this idea. They explained that during her bouts of depression, she behaved quite differently. Specifically, during those difficult times, she would cut off contact with her family and become very withdrawn, and this withdrawal increased over time. But now, things were different. Before her disappearance, she showed no signs of distress. She was still sociable, full of energy, and maintained relationships with others. In fact, she seemed fine and felt inspired by her work. The police spoke to Emily's friends, who confirmed that she had been doing well recently. She was no longer troubled by her breakup with her ex-boyfriend, and had even stopped taking the antidepressants prescribed by her doctor. Her life had improved, and she felt no need to continue the medication. During the investigation, the police found no useful information or leads. They decided to contact the FBI for assistance. The police suspected that if Emily had been kidnapped, she might have been taken across state lines. But this investigation also yielded no results. The police then spoke with Emily's ex-boyfriend. Friends described their relationship as loving, but often filled with conflict. Eventually, the couple realized they were not compatible and decided to break up. The police discovered that her ex had attended a party on the night of her disappearance. Multiple witnesses confirmed that he and Emily had been seen together. He was one of the last people to leave the restaurant in the early morning, along with other partygoers. While he may have watched over Emily's friend, there was no evidence that he intended to harm her. Throughout the evening, he spent time with Emily as a friend. During police questioning, her ex provided a verified alibi. He had left with friends and traveled to another city, quickly eliminating him from the suspect list. The police then focused on Emily's co-workers at the restaurant. Several employees noted that one co-worker had feelings for Emily and wanted to pursue a relationship with her, but she had rejected him. He was summoned to the police station for questioning, where he denied any wrongdoing, insisting that he was only friends with Emily. He mentioned that they had talked a lot the night before she went missing, as he rarely saw her compared to the other employees. Before leaving the restaurant at 11 p.m., he wished Emily well and rushed to a concert for which he had tickets. His alibi was confirmed, and he was no longer considered a suspect. The next suspect was Dave. Several girls reported that he had difficulty communicating with women. He often tried to pursue a relationship with a coworker but was rude, making many people feel uncomfortable. Dave was eventually fired from the restaurant because of his aggressive behavior. The restaurant manager, Gregory McKnight, mentioned that he had heard about Dave making inappropriate comments to other employees. Gregory found Dave's behavior suspicious and reported it to the police, thinking it might be related to Emily's disappearance. However, witnesses stated that no one had seen Dave at the restaurant the night Emily went missing. Due to his suspicious behavior, the police decided to continue investigating him. They suspected that he may have been following Emily, possibly waiting for her after her shift while hiding on the street. He was taken to the police station for questioning, where he provided an alibi that was corroborated by several witnesses, leading to his removal from the suspect list. The investigation was then suspended due to a lack of solid evidence, as all avenues of investigation had proven fruitless. Each suspect had a credible alibi. Police believe that Emily may have either escaped or taken her own life. However, they require more evidence to support this theory. In the meantime, some of Emily's close friends disagree with these possibilities. As time went on, days passed without any sign of Emily. The university campus was covered with missing person flyers featuring her picture. While everyone believed she was missing, the police realized that the crucial 48-hour window to find her alive had passed. However, the investigation was still ongoing. The family did not receive any demands from the kidnappers. There were no calls or ransom demands, so the possibility of her being kidnapped was dismissed. Due to the uncertain safety conditions at the school, students were asked to walk in pairs. To address the dangerous situation, security forces were assigned to accompany students on campus. For Emily's family, this was the most difficult period, filled with constant fear and anxiety. Her parents could not eat or sleep. They desperately searched for information about their daughter's whereabouts, but all their efforts were unsuccessful. An important discovery redirected the investigation. A month before Emily went missing, Ronald had a minor traffic accident. After the accident, the other driver got out of the car to check the damage and assist Ronald. During this time, Ronald discovered that the driver who caused the accident had several guns in the trunk of his car, which had been opened by the collision. Concerned, Ronald decided to call the police and report the incident. 2 months passed, and on December 9, 2000, officers from the sheriff's office were dispatched to a trailer park. They were supposed to inform the driver of the accident from October that he was being charged with complicity in a burglary. Thanks to Ronald's testimony, they were able to solve a series of crimes. The officers went to the address where the car's owner was registered, but found no one there. The trailer appeared to be abandoned, and next to it, they found several cars in poor condition. However, before leaving, the officers noticed another car behind the man's house that stood out from the others because it was new. The car was checked against the database, and the police discovered that it was a green car that belonged to another vehicle that was also listed as missing. Officers passed this information on to the police investigating Emily's disappearance. The most surprising aspect for the police was the identity of the owner of the trailer where Emily's car was discovered. The trailer belonged to Gregory McKnight, a chef at the restaurant where Emily worked, who had previously tried to blame his co-workers for her disappearance. The police then obtained a search warrant for the trailer. An officer entered through a window and immediately noticed a terrible smell of decay. Inside, they found bloodstains, and upon further investigation, discovered Emily Murray's body wrapped in a rug. An autopsy confirmed that she had died from a gunshot wound to the right side of her head. More than a month had passed since Emily's disappearance, and now the investigation had to inform her family of the tragic outcome. Gregory McKnight, the prime suspect, was quickly arrested and questioned. He answered briefly and vaguely and appeared very guarded, as if he were closely monitoring what he said. When the police informed Gregory that they had discovered a body in a missing car, he stopped cooperating and requested a lawyer. The situation was made easier by the fact that Gregory was already wanted for burglary, which meant he could not evade arrest and could be held while the details of Emily's death were investigated. The trailer was thoroughly examined, revealing bloodstains and a bullet hole in the bodywork, which a forensic scientist identified as the scene of the murder. By this point, there was enough evidence to conclude that Emily had been murdered in Gregory's trailer. The forensic expert would need to provide a detailed report after the autopsy. The investigation continued, and after 2 days, a major discovery was made. Forensic scientists searched the area around the trailer for a murder weapon and decided to examine a nearby well. Instead of finding a murder weapon, they discovered a human skeleton. This skeleton appeared to belong to an older person, probably a male. The identity of this second victim remains unknown. Prior to these events, a young man named Gregory Julios had gone missing in the area. A forensic expert verified this connection. The details of his disappearance matched those of Emily's case. He had been reported missing about 6 months earlier in a nearby town. According to his girlfriend, Gregory Julius had left home to attend a college party with a friend named Gregory McKnight. He was the last person known to have seen Gregory Julius alive, and Gregory McKnight was called to the station for questioning. During questioning, Gregory McKnight stated that he did not know where his friend was. At this point, a search was underway for the missing man. He said that he had attended a party with his friend, Gregory Julius. However, he claimed that they had parted ways after the party and that he had not seen Gregory Julius since then. The police found no evidence that Gregory McKnight was involved in his friend's disappearance, so he was released. Gregory Julius's girlfriend recognized the clothing found on the body as belonging to him, and the medical examiner confirmed the identity of the body as indeed being Gregory Julius. Due to these new developments, Gregory McKnight was questioned again. He gave brief answers, carefully choosing his words, and avoided providing any substantial information. The police suspected that he was lying and hiding something, apparently trying to buy time. However, the police had strong evidence against him, as they discovered not only a body but also several bags of Gregory Julius's belongings in his trailer. Gregory McKnight was born into a dysfunctional family and grew up in Quincy, New York. At the age of 15, he was convicted of murdering a resident during a robbery and was sent to a juvenile detention facility. After his release, he married his wife, a former employee of the correctional facility where he had been held. The couple initially lived in his wife's mother's house before purchasing a trailer in Ray, Ohio. His wife said she suspected he was involved in Emily's kidnapping because he had become anxious and exhibited unusual behavior after Emily's disappearance. Despite her concerns, she tried to hold on to hope that her husband was not involved in the case. With this information, the police began to suspect that they were dealing with a dangerous killer. The prosecution collected all the items taken from Gregory McKnight's home, specifically a shovel, pruning shears, an axe, and a hunting knife. These items were sent for testing and found to have traces of Gregory Julius's DNA on them. The prosecutor sought the death penalty for Emily's murder. However, the judge ruled that the county, being the poorest and least populous in the state, could not afford a death penalty trial and could not guarantee that Gregory McKnight would receive a fair trial. As a result, the case was moved to another county, causing administrative delays. The trial did not begin until 2002. During the trial, multiple witnesses testified that Gregory McKnight had secret romantic feelings for Emily, suggesting that he may have been obsessed with her, although he appeared to have suppressed those feelings. Gregory McKnight often defended Emily when other boys bothered her. Generally, he seemed to be a friendly person. The restaurant's bartender mentioned that after Emily went missing, Gregory McKnight told him that he felt she was dead. Other co-workers noted that Gregory McKnight was seen leaving with Emily that night. The prosecution argued that Gregory McKnight knew it was Emily's last shift at the restaurant, which prompted his actions. They believed he met her after work and may have given her a ride home. During that ride, he confessed his feelings for Emily, but when she rejected him, he kidnapped her and then murdered her. Unlike the Emily Murray case, there were fewer witnesses in the Gregory Julius case. Evidence was also limited, but new information emerged during the investigation. It was discovered that the car driven by Gregory Julius had been sold shortly after his disappearance. Gregory McKnight's car was identified, and blood found in the back seat matched Gregory Julius's DNA, implicating Gregory McKnight in Gregory Julius's death. However, the motive for killing Gregory Julius remained unclear. With the evidence being so strong, the attorneys did not attempt to argue that Gregory McKnight was innocent and instead chose a different strategy. The defense argued that Gregory McKnight was struggling with mental health issues, claiming that he was unable to control his actions. Additionally, they argued that the victim, Emily, was mentally unstable and was contemplating ending her life, asserting that Gregory McKnight had helped her do so. This notion angered Emily's parents, who were deeply offended by the attorney's argument, as Emily was deeply religious and would never choose to end her life voluntarily. Despite the defense's various tactics, the jury ultimately sided with the prosecution. Gregory McKnight was convicted of first-degree murder for Emily's death, as well as kidnapping and burglary. He faces the death penalty. Emily's family is religious and opposed to the death penalty. However, Gregory McKnight was sentenced to death by lethal injection for the murder of Emily, along with a life sentence for the murder of Gregory Julius, 10 years for kidnapping, and a year and a half for burglary. After his conviction, he filed several appeals. all of which were unsuccessful. More than 20 years have passed, but Gregory McKnight is still alive. He expressed his desire to be executed, stating that he wanted to die for his crimes, but later changed his mind. In 2020, Gregory McKnight began arguing that his sentence was unjust due to racial bias in his trial. He alleged that the all-white jury treated him unfairly and insulted him. Emily's parents remain confused about why Gregory McKnight killed their daughter and do not believe his assertions of his obsession with her. They felt that Gregory McKnight harbored resentment towards the college students he worked with at the restaurant, many of whom came from wealthy families, including Emily, whom he chose to take revenge on. However, because of their religious beliefs, Emily's parents believed that her death was not in vain, as it led to the arrest of Gregory McKnight and held him accountable for all the sins he committed, ultimately saving the lives of others. In honor of Emily, they planted a tree near the university. Every year on November 2 and on her birthday, they release a red balloon into the sky in her memory. The family also plans to scatter the rest of Emily's ashes, which are currently kept in an urn at home. The first half of her ashes was buried in the church cemetery.